right. Well, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to welcome you to FHFA's inaugural Velocity TechSprint Demo Day event. Just note that today's session is being recorded. So we have a packed agenda for you today. We're going to be featuring 2 panel sessions and demonstrations from our teams that represent a talented and diverse cross-section of the mortgage industry and who've been working all week on solving for how data and digitization can drive transparency, increase access, fairness, affordability, sustainability, and most importantly, trust in mortgage lending. Now, before I introduce Jason Cave to kick us off with some opening remarks, we have prepared a video that helps illustrate why we're all here today. So as you can see, today is about finding ways to connect data digitization with the consumer and real-life outcomes in housing finance. To continue on that theme and officially open Demo Day, please join me in welcoming to the stage Jason Cave, FHFA Deputy Director, the Division of Conservatorship, Oversight, and Readiness.
Thanks, Anne Marie. That was quite a powerful message. Good reminder about why we are here this week. So thank you for all of you for joining us today on day 4 of the Velocity Tech Sprint. You might have noticed that there was no coffee available to you this morning. That was my call. I wanted to add another challenge to the sprint. Give it that survivor feel. So you can thank me later. For those of you in the audience joining us for the first time this week, welcome. You have walked into a real cauldron of innovation this morning, and I believe you will be impressed by the thoughtful concepts, strategies, and products developed by the teams. To our sprinters, thank you for your hard work this week. You've come together as leaders in your respective companies to collectively solve some of the biggest challenges in the mortgage process, and my hope is that you continue to work together and with us after this event is over. We need your enthusiasm and vision now more than ever. This is FHFA's first tech sprint, and we have been thrilled by how readily you hit the ground running to free us from the obstacles that block the free and fair flow of data in the mortgage process. We have also been deeply impressed by the spirit of generosity and collaboration you displayed throughout this competitive exercise. Now, we purposely set this event up for 4 days to follow the famous Tuckman stages of group development. You guys are all familiar with Tuckman, correct? But let's just go over it. Day 1, forming. And I saw some great examples of polite reframing of team priorities on Monday. Then day 2, storming. I always liked that stage. Saw a couple of teams throwing the magic markers at each other. Yes, Jeff, I did see you. Day 3, norming. I could tell by the more relaxed smiles yesterday that the groups were hitting their stride. But seriously, I want to acknowledge the commitment you've all made to this. You've taken a week out of your very busy schedules to be here. That means you've put off commitments at work and at home, and I know that is a big ask. So let's give a round of applause to all our participants. And while the sprinters have made this week's event a success, we could not have held this event without the hard work from Team FHFA and the Alliance for Innovative Regulation. It's hard to believe that 6 months ago, we were just starting to put some ideas on paper to sketch out the basics of the TechSprint. Anne-Marie and Liang, you guys were there at the beginning. You kept the momentum going. You kept me focused, working closely with Joanne and David and the AIR team. And a big thanks to Beverly Bogarty and the operations branch for keeping us all well-fed and comfortable throughout the week. And a special shout out to Fannie and Freddie teams who help field questions and provide subject matter expertise. Thank you all. And how about that velocity insignia? I plan on getting cufflinks made of it, quite honestly. And I thank Lawrence Mack on our team for the design work and for serving as our very own Anderson Cooper, asking many of you probing, interesting interview questions during the sessions. So, why a TechSprint? What's a TechSprint? And how is this different from the hundreds, if not thousands, of conferences that we've all attended over the years? I can tell you that if you told me 30 years ago, and it was actually 30 years ago yesterday, that was my anniversary of 30 years of federal service. I know I look young, and my parents put me in the FDIC examiner training program in kindergarten, so that explains it. But if you had asked me 30 years ago, when I was an assistant examiner in Connecticut, that I would be leading a TechSprint in Washington, well, my 1993 self would first likely ask, what the heck is a TechSprint? And then I would say, I don't have time to think about TechSprints. I need to copy by hand, in pencil, all of the loan terms and covenants from the bank's credit files onto a separate piece of paper, which I will then staple to my work papers that I have also written out by hand, in pencil, evaluating the creditworthiness of borrowers. Because that's what we did back in the 90s, the 1990s, not the 1890s. And how did we pick which loan files to review, you might ask? Well, since I was just an assistant examiner back then, I didn't have much of a say in the process, but it seemed like it was a pretty random process to me. Now, you will be pleased to know that by the dawn of the millennium, we had in fact adopted automated line cards, which autofilled much of the basic loan information from the credit files. That enabled us assistant examiners to use our business degrees to evaluate cash flow, challenge collateral valuations, and get the senior examiners coffee and donuts. The new system called Alert also enabled us to base our loan review sample on various portfolio risk attributes. For institutions that experience significant growth between exams, this tool enabled us to get a better handle on the underwriting terms and quality of the portfolio, which was a far better approach than a random sample, I assure you. So this innovation improved efficiency and enhanced safety and soundness, which just goes to show you that these concepts are compatible rather than contradictory. But it wasn't without costs and headaches. Often the bank systems and ours weren't compatible. The inputs sometimes produced some unreliable outputs, and some of the examiners decided it would just be more efficient to keep doing everything by hand. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Yeah. My point in sharing this ancient history is that had we in the banks decided that this new process was just too burdensome to adopt, had we chosen to sit this innovation out, we would have missed out on an opportunity of a lifetime to modernize our exam process and improve our risk scoping abilities. And that was just the beginning. So now back to 2023. So we talked about forming, talked about storming and norming, which brings us to day 4, demo day, which on the Tuckman scale, I believe, is performing. So it's showtime. When the rubber hits the road and the teams get to show us what they came up with, each team will have 5 minutes to pitch their idea and 3 minutes to answer questions from our illustrious and independent panel of judges. I do want to emphasize that our distinguished panel of judges are reaching their conclusions entirely independently, and none of the prizes or the content of the presentations should be misunderstood as an official endorsement or project of FHFA. And that was a legal disclaimer, and I was told to not ad-lib, so there, got that done. I again want to thank FHFA Director Sandra Thompson for providing the vision and thought leadership that ultimately made this week's event a possibility. Director Thompson encouraged us all on Monday to seek out long-term solutions to promote access to mortgage credit that is both sustainable and accessible to creditworthy borrowers throughout the country. Now, before I introduce our distinguished panel, a couple of parting thoughts. This has been a fun week. We've had a unique opportunity to push back against the conventional boundaries that define and often stifle innovation in the mortgage process. But the real test as to whether this TechSprint will be remembered as just an enjoyable conference or as the beginning of something much bigger will be in the actions that we collectively take to make these ideas a reality. The real work starts when we leave today. So before we get on our planes and trains and automobiles and go back to the "you have exceeded your inbox by 10,000 messages" email, which awaits all of you at home, I would ask us all, FHFA included, to get 3 or 4 names. People in your group or in the room that said something that spoke to you this week, or someone that had a very different approach to a problem than yours. Form accountability groups so that you can stay in touch and keep each other motivated. And I fully expect and look forward to you tapping me on the shoulder at the next conference, asking how we and the enterprises are doing and bringing these ideas to reality. And I look forward to that. And now back to the program. We are lucky to be joined today by 2 of the sharpest minds in the country working on finance, access, and technology. Lisa Rice is the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance, or NFHA, the nation's only national civil rights organization solely dedicated to eliminating all forms of housing discrimination. Lisa is a widely respected voice in Washington and has provided valued advice and analysis to FHFA for years. Lisa also held a hackathon just a few weeks ago, focusing on how we can use artificial intelligence to address many of the challenges in the mortgage process. It was a great event, and we look forward to working with Lisa and her team on many of the ideas coming out of that event. Delicia Hand is the Director of Financial Fairness Advocacy at Consumer Reports, where she helps lead CR's advocacy for a fair and just marketplace in which people's financial well-being is supported through safe, transparent, and innovative products and services. Delicia joined Consumer Reports after a decade at the CFPB, working on elevating its financial inclusion agenda and ensuring that the voice and experience of consumers were more integrated in the Bureau's policymaking. We were lucky to have Delicia speak to the FHFA a few months back about the new program she has introduced at Consumer Reports to evaluate financial products such as buy now, pay later programs. Hopefully she'll be telling us a little bit more about how that's been going. Lisa and Delicia's Fireside Chat will be moderated by Joanne Barefoot, the founder and CEO of the Alliance for Innovative Regulation, or AIR, which aims to help make the financial system fairer and more resilient by spurring the development of new solutions for financial consumers that employ the advantages and combat the risks of digital innovation. And she's also the creator of the whole concept of TechSprints, and so we've been very lucky to have her and her team. So with that, please join me in welcoming Joanne, Delicia, and Lisa.
Good morning. So I'm so thrilled to be here today. This is an amazing event, and we can't wait to get to the main course, which is going to be the demos. Jason, thank you for that introduction and your remarks. We want to thank you and your team and Director Thompson for making this event come together. And I just wanted to share in your optimism that it's going to make a real impact. And to my panelists, I want to say, we know each other well. We have spent many hours talking about these issues. And I want the audience to know that both of you are working on the core issues of fairness in finance and in mortgage finance. And you're not just thought leaders, you're action leaders. You're both doing things whose work has the potential to actually impact how markets operate and how people do the things that they do. And so I'm thrilled to have you with us today. I want to take just one moment or two to just explain a little bit more about your respective work, the work that you're doing. And Delicia, we can start with you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. So my name is Delicia Hand, and at Consumer Reports, I am leading an initiative to evaluate fintech products and services. Really, I like to say sometimes, we are evaluating digitized finance. So not just fintech products, but also the way in which digitization helps to facilitate the delivery of financial services products. Why? Because we believe it's time and the technology facilities exist to demonstrate, well, what's actually happening as a result of consumers using digital finance products. How is fintech beyond marketing and promises actually delivering for consumers? Additionally, what are the ways in which companies are leveraging technology capabilities to infuse fairness into the products and actually effectively situate consumers with respect to their rights? It is our view that it's not enough, and we're seeing this in the research that we're doing. So we're actually testing fintech products, the apps in particular, by product, and I'll say a bit more later, to see what companies are doing to actually seize the opportunity, not just to meet legal requirements, but to think about new and innovative ways to situate consumers with respect to their rights and important information in the products that they're using.
Thank you. Elisa.
Sure, happy to share. So we're doing a number of things, believe it or not, proactively to address the issue of algorithmic bias. That's really where our focus is. I think most people think of the National Fair Housing Alliance as an enforcement agency, and we definitely do have a rigorous enforcement program. But we're doing a ton of other things as well. We stood up our Tech Equity Initiative a couple of years ago. Really, the genesis of it occurred in the throes of litigation against Facebook, because we realized then, probably more clearly than we had previously, that technology really is the civil rights frontier. It is the new civil rights frontier. And if it is the new civil rights frontier, then we had to be leading it. So in that initiative, we are using AI to develop new tools and systems for debiasing legacy systems and models, but also building new models that are fair, equitable, and efficient from the outset. We're working to develop policies to advance responsible AI. We're doing a lot of work to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the AI and tech space. The technology field is a very homogeneous field, and we're working to help diversify the field. And then we're conducting research to help identify bias in technological systems, measure the extent of the bias, and then ways to develop and mitigate the bias that we see in AI and data-driven systems.
I think it's fair to say that all three of us believe that these new technologies pose a lot of risk to consumers, as you're saying, Lisa, but also are offering some incredible upside potential to do better for consumers if we get it right. But let's start with the downside risk, and Lisa, maybe start with you. What worries you the most, specifically on algorithmic bias potentially doing harm to financial consumers and homebuyers?
That's a great question, Joanne. So a lot worries me. We don't have enough time to tick through everything that worries me. I think what worries me the most is that we're behind the curve. We're significantly behind the ball. We have had decades, literally decades, of I will use the term unleash, of untested systems, particularly in the housing and financial services space, that have been causing bias, that have been perpetuating bias and causing harm to literally millions of consumers. We're just now realizing the extent of the harm of these systems that we've been using for years and years. And at the National Fair Housing Alliance, when we first started addressing algorithmic bias almost 4 decades ago, if you look at our early settlements, Joanne, we actually limit and restrict or completely prohibit the use of insurance scoring systems, automated underwriting systems, credit scoring systems, because we could detect the discrimination that those systems were yielding. The refrain that we kept getting back at that time from regulators and the industry was, computers don't see race, computers don't see gender, and so therefore their computers can't discriminate, when we know that the opposite is the true. Data-driven systems can see race, gender, and other types of demographic characteristics oftentimes quicker than the human eye can detect it, and those systems generate bias and have done for many decades. So what really worries me is that we're behind the ball and we're not doing enough to catch up.
Yeah. Delicia, what are you worried about?
Yeah, like Lisa, that is a longer conversation, but highlights include, I think for us, we are particularly focused on the fact that algorithms, AI are now integrated into all parts of the financial product cycle. So before a consumer even uses a product, you have the use of behavioral analytics, then in the onboarding, then you have the potential for called deceptive design practices, which was formerly referred to as dark patterns that could potentially steer consumers into more costly or less transparent options. So as you go through the product life cycle, there are all kinds of technologies that are integrated, which can either help or they can harm, right? They can further reinforce discrimination and the costliness and predation of financial products. And so we see that as, we're concerned about that. And yet, how do we steer the direction and really hone on the ways in which we can leverage these same facilities to drive towards fairness, to ensure that fairness is the starting point, not an aspiration?
we have a lot of people here who are, and a lot of people on the teams who are mortgage lenders or representing the mortgage industry in one way or another. And I think one of the powerful points here is that people are extending mortgage credit believing that they are unbiased, that they're being fair, that they're looking at objective data. And yet we know that these seemingly objective criteria and metrics are full of legacy structural bias that has been sanitized on the surface now over decades. And so today people don't even realize that the bias is there. If you put yourselves in the shoes of the lender, what do you think are the most important things that can be done to make sure that your lending is really fair? Delicia.
I'd say a couple of things. One, we have to move beyond prevention. We have legal frameworks that are grounded in preventing discrimination, but that's not the same as ensuring equity, fairness, transparency. And so one of the things that we would like to see is more innovation that is targeted towards affirmatively placing consumers in the right position. What if personalized pricing actually meant it was personally fair and really optimized for that consumer's particular circumstances and data, and it was the right product for them. It was affordable and it was fair. So I think that is something that we think is actually available in some of the examinations that we've started to do of fintech products. One of the things that we find interesting is that we're seeing the same traditional Stone Age approaches used in terms of when it comes to situating consumers with respect to their rights. So we have various disclosure regimes that say, here's a ton of 3.5 font information now being delivered mobilely, right? Is that really transparent? Is that really situating or enabling a consumer to make a choice? And then on the product delivery side, we see the use of techniques like gamifications, push notifications. What if we were pushing important information at the right time? What if we saw more products using those techniques to really situate the consumers to make the best decisions and evaluate products that were personalized based on fairness?
And Lisa, what's your advice to the industry on what to do? And then I also want to turn to whether you've seen examples, upside examples of actual benefits of technology in this process.
Sure. So there are lots of things that we're encouraging industry players to do. As I mentioned before, we have a ton of work to do, right? And we're encouraging industry partners to work with us to create data sets that we can use for research, because we really need that. Research and also developing systems that drive fairness, equity, and efficiency in data-driven solutions. And I have to give a shout out to CoreLogic, who really has been a leader in terms of partnering with civil rights organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance to create these data sets that we can use for a very limited, restricted purpose, as I mentioned, but it is yielding such great results. I mean, one of the biggest barriers that we face with our Tech Equity Initiative, Joanne, was finding data, because in order to execute on AI solutions, as you know, you need lots of data. And it was really hard to get that. It's one of the areas where I think the federal government is actually failing us, Joanne, because the federal government is the repository of reams of data that it could be making available for good, and the government hasn't yet caught up to that. The other things that we're encouraging industry players to do is to ramp up efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We held, as was mentioned, our first tech equity hackathon. The majority of the participants in our hackathon were from diverse market segments. And the learning that we were able to see because of the different perspectives being brought to the table was really quite powerful. The other thing we're encouraging industry players to do is train their workforces around issues of tech equity and responsible AI. One of the things that I often do, because whenever I talk to industry groups, the first pushback I get is, no, wait a minute, these systems they're based on science, they're based on fact, they're based on data, they don't perpetuate bias. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is go to the Bing browser and just type in the search engine, beautiful women, and tell me what you see. And people look at that and they're shocked, because what you see is picture after picture, image after image of young white women. That's the image of beauty. But we know that Black women are beautiful, Native American women are beautiful, Asian American women are beautiful, right? We know that older women are beautiful, not just young women are beautiful. And so then we use that to sort of segue and say, okay, just like that Bing search engine is delivering a biased representation of this aesthetic frame, credit scoring systems that are not built based on comprehensive, robust data are also yielding those same kinds of biased outcomes. And so that training is really, really important. And we're seeing more industry players do that. Now, in terms of how we're seeing industry use AI for good, we are seeing some industry players test some of the fairness solutions that we've been researching to learn how those fairness solutions can expand equitable housing opportunities for people and financial opportunities for people, but also more, to Delicia's point, more accurately assess the risk of those consumers.
You make the point that we don't have enough data, and it does seem like that's the secret to it. There's an emerging sector of RegTech companies that are providing that service of analyzing the lending decision. It can be baked into the underwriting model, but can also be used as a compliance tool to look at whether, if you use more data, you get an equally sound lending decision that's less biased and more inclusive. And there's a lot of evidence that that is becoming more and more possible. Would either of you want to comment on the promise that we're seeing from that type of data-rich analysis that goes beyond traditional underwriting factors?
Sure, I'm happy to. I mean, one of the organizations, Joanne, that we both do a lot of work with, FinReg Labs, has done some amazing research in this area showing that by using more comprehensive data sets, by even including what we call non-traditional data, that we can yield better results, more accurate results, and fairer results. And you know, I totally get that companies have already invested a ton of money in their legacy systems and trying to get different systems to coordinate and correspond with one another. But the potential for really changing the game, if you think about it, technology really is the only place where companies are really making significant investments. And if we can establish a framing where companies will only invest in technologies that advance responsible AI, that advance equity, think about the exponential change we can exact in our marketplace. I mean, it could be really powerful. This could be paradigm shifting if we do it right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Delicia?
I would add to that only a couple of things to say, harkening back to, I think, my last comments. What if the least discriminatory option was the standard, right? So instead of an additional requirement for companies to find the least discriminatory alternative, that was the starting point. And we no longer have to start with what ifs, right? There are really great examples where research has shown that algorithms can correct for bias, can mitigate, and can actually be part of the solution. And at the same time, I think one of the things that we are examining for is to make sure that there is balance, right? That there is still the possibility of human intervention to either correct for bias or to not intervene when a non-biased solution or product is offered to consumers. You still see instances, particularly in the mortgage lending space, where customers are offered fair price, fair product, the algorithm works, and humans intervene to say, well, actually, you're self-employed or other things. So how are we also making sure that there is both, right? That we are using the technology, but also using human intervention so that we can, again, have the least discriminatory alternative be the starting point.
If I can add one more thing there, Joanne, one of the concerns that we've heard a lot is that certain AI solutions sort of force a trade-off between fairness and accuracy. And you hear that a lot with adversarial debiasing types of techniques. That may be the case, and part of that is because adversarial solutions are limited. They can sort of only optimize for one thing at a time. And so you have to kind of go in stages where you're applying the adversary to ratchet up, if you will, or level up to reach your various goals. And so oftentimes I hear people say, well, there's this dichotomy between fairness and accuracy. But we're testing solutions that allow for global optimization, multifaceted optimization, so that you can both optimize for fairness and equity simultaneously. There is no trade-off. So I wanted to just add that because we are really learning a lot more and advancing the ball, and we could do more. And I have to say that this is where the industry can also assist us as well, right? Supporting these kinds of efforts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The potential to have a win-win, as someone who's been a regulator and worked with these kinds of issues for decades, we have so many issues where there's the tug-of-war or a tension between the regulators and the industry or the advocates in the industry. And when you identify these areas where we could leap forward to the shared goal of fully inclusive and fair finance, that is sound lending, there's just a huge opportunity. And you mentioned FinReg Lab. I'm glad you did. We had Melissa Coita, the CEO, here on Monday of FinReg Lab. So I want to save a few minutes for questions from the audience, but let me ask you this. If we're going for a win-win, and if we have this complex ecosystem of industry, regulators, consumers, advocacy groups, and all the enablers, and the GSEs, and so on, you really almost need to have an ecosystem shift. It's hard for any one player to take us where we need to go there. So Delicia, starting with you, what could be done to form community solutions and go in the right direction here together?
Sure, that's a great question because the moment has changed. We live in a low-code, tech-accessible environment where innovation is the norm, and people are coming up with solutions for themselves. And so really it's time for new tables, new participants, advocacy organizations, consumer groups like Consumer Reports and Lisa's organization, for example, are now developing tech solutions. So you really do need an ecosystem approach. I think the other thing is to ensure that we're learning from history. There's a lot of chatter right now and a lot of conversations around AI, but how is that actually manifesting into changing the trajectory, which we already see being set, right? Ensuring that there's actually tech access and digital access is an important part of the solution, and engaging with communities who may not have access to these tools that are being developed and left out of the conversation as well. And then the last thing I would say is there is growing research pointing to consumer expectations, particularly younger consumers, in terms of their expectations about what a product should and would do, and think about where that trajectory could go. If technology were deployed, we're exploring it, to direct consumers to expect fairness, to expect companies to perform to a certain standard, that will change the marketplace. And so there's a different kind of mandate that exists around tech equity and issues of fairness today.
The demographic trend there is so important. The size of the millennial generation and the Gen Z coming behind them, and so many important shifts here that are going to, frankly, dominate marketplaces, workplaces, and everything else. Lisa, what advice do you have on how we could shift the whole ecosystem forward?
What Delicia said. Ditto everything.
Okay, great. Do we have questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Do we need to take a mic down? Got a mic on the way to you.
Thank you. Can you express how important it would be for the tech industry to enable alternative datas like rent, like utility bills, elevate them, make them more universally understood and accepted to render credit decisions?
Sure, I can start off answering that question. It's profoundly important, and I'm struck by the adjective that you used there. You said alternative data such as rent. I am old enough to remember when rent was not considered alternative data, but traditional and mandatory and required data to inform whether the decision around whether or not a borrower was likely to repay their mortgage. In fact, when I started out, so I'm telling my age by saying this, when I started out, if I was underwriting a loan file, I looked at several things, literally. What was the rental housing payment history? What's the housing payment shock? Is the person gainfully employed? And is the property in good condition? If all four of those requirements were met, you basically got the loan. We don't even consider two of those things when we're analyzing and determining whether or not a consumer is creditworthy. And so just the way we think about data and how we're typifying data has changed, right, over the course of the years. And what we're trying to do is to change that paradigm, to get us out of this framework that credit score, the automated underwriting system, right, the risk-based pricing systems that we have in the market today are the end-all, be-all. We want to disrupt that. We want to disrupt that notion. And we want to yield systems that are based on data that really tells the true picture about a borrower's creditworthiness or ability to repay their obligation. When I say disrupt, I mean we do want to disrupt. I'm a little tickled because a couple of years ago we held a forum on FHA, and one of your judges, I won't say which one, but she said, we need to blow up the whole system. And I couldn't agree more. We need to blow it up, and we need to build new systems and frameworks that are fair and equitable for every single person in our society. If we do that, Citigroup conducted research that showed if we eliminated racially inequitable systems and policies against Black people alone, just Black people, we would increase the U.S. GDP by $5 trillion over 5 years. So this really is, it is a necessity that we do this.
When we think about blowing up the system and starting from scratch,
Is that going to be a quote?
yeah, I was gonna
FHFA.
say, apologies to our
Jason is over there looking.
hosts over here. When we think about starting from scratch, it's partly to take a fresh look at these issues and finding these biases, and it's also working toward a digitally native approach that isn't just layering some new techniques on top of these old routes that are so inefficient that, you know, they were the best that was available maybe at the time. But the opportunity to really start over and deeply redesign is huge. We've got 2 minutes left. Last question for you both is, what should consumers know about their rights in this whole mix? Delicia, you want to go first?
You know, I would say let's stop putting the onus on consumers to find out what their rights are in the first place. Products should be shaped around delivering services and products that are in conformity with consumers' rights. And then, as I mentioned beginning, we have the opportunity to situate consumers appropriately so that they actually engage. We know disclosures don't work, right? We know consumers do not meaningfully engage with them, and through our testing and consumer research, they are important, however, when consumers get into trouble, right? And so we have to stop putting the onus on consumers to go dig something up and find out what their rights are. Rights should be integrated into the product delivery, and if it is not, it's not a product that consumers should use.
Couldn't agree more, and but at the same time, you know, I second what you said, Delicia, about making sure that consumers know their rights and can detect when something is wrong, even if they don't know exactly what it is, but the ability to detect, and then after sort of detecting that something is fishy, knowing where to go to get help. Research shows, so there are over 4 million instances of housing discrimination that occur each year in the United States of America. Only 2% get reported. Yeah. Why? Because most consumers don't know how to detect, and if they do detect, they don't know where to go to complain, to file an official complaint. And if they do know where to go to complain, they don't believe anything will be done, so it's a futile gesture, and they don't do anything, right? So we do have to change that, and we have to invest more in consumer education and awareness, but also making sure that our enforcement systems really do work so that when consumers complain, something will be done and they will get redress for any harms that have been done to them. Now, having said that, we know that the professional, the housing or lending professional, will always have superior knowledge over the consumer, to Delicia's point, right? And so we have to make sure as professionals that when we're engaging with consumers, we have their rights and best interest foremost, right, in everything that we do.
Just add one last thing, which is, I think one of the exciting things to me that is happening is the work around digital consumer agents to really facilitate consumer awareness of when their rights are being violated. And there's some great reg tech and soup tech being developed. But again, these will quickly become the norm. And I think the question to you all is, when will products that are on the marketplace catch up to these developing standards?
Absolutely. Please join me in thanking our panel. Thank you. And now I want to welcome to the stage my colleague and co-founder of AIR, David Eric, who's going to be our MC for the next and the most exciting session. Well, not more exciting than that, but David, you've got your mic.
I do, and I want to take this moment and invite the judges to come down to the judges' table. Melissa, Steve, please join us. So thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Lisa and Delicia, because that was really a powerful and insightful panel. And I think what we're learning, I think what many of us know, is that technology has an incredible opportunity to provide us with great insight and great upside, but we are facing many challenges in terms of how to ensure that we use technology appropriately and avoid the downfalls of technology. I want to welcome everyone to this demo day of the inaugural FHFA Velocity TechSprint on how to use responsible technology to make the mortgage process more open, transparent, inclusive, and cost-effective. And what an amazing week this has been. 4 days, 10 teams, 15 experts, 77 sprinters. Can we hear it from the sprinters? Woo! Our participants are representing over 60 organizations across the mortgage ecosystem. Our programming this week has hosted more than 480 observers, and we are currently streaming live with more than 100 people watching us today. So my name is David Eric, and I am the co-founder and executive director of AIR, the Alliance for Innovative Regulation. And we're a nonprofit dedicated to the digital modernization of the financial regulatory system. And at AIR, we are so pleased to partner with the Federal Housing Financial Agency to help design and launch their inaugural TechSprint. I want to thank our partners at FHFA whose vision and dedication have made this day possible. Director Sandra Thompson and Jason Cave, and the team at the Office of Financial Technology, Tracy Steffen, Anne-Marie Pippin, and Liang Jensen. You guys have been amazing partners, and we're really honored to be able to work with you. Through the course of this initiative, we have brought together a diverse group of thought leaders from across the mortgage and lending industry. Regulators, GSEs, banks and non-bank lenders, fintech innovators, and academics to explore how technology can be leveraged to help solve for an improved, more inclusive, and more efficient mortgage process. The participants on these teams have only just met, and it has been a roller coaster, as Jason described, going through all the predictable stages of group formation, storming, forming, norming. And during this very short window of 3 days, these teams had to define their problem statement, analyze data, develop a digital prototype, and communicate a proposed solution. So what is a TechSprint, and why are they important? And in the face of sometimes what seems like large and intractable problems, TechSprints help us center ourselves on the art of the possible. The TechSprint is a very powerful collaboration, problem-solving methodology adapted from the technology hackathon model, where people work intensively for a short period of time to solve a concrete problem. Tech sprints are particularly useful when there is no one node in an ecosystem that can drive resolution to a complex problem. And the goal of a tech sprint is to jumpstart innovation and radically decrease cycle time for prototyping new digital solutions. Tech sprints do this by bringing together people with a diversity of skills and backgrounds and perspectives. And this helps break down silos within an industry and create momentum for charting a path towards solution. We're going to see some key themes today. Many of the solutions that you will see today are trying to solve for the significant fragmentation at the heart of the structure of the mortgage industry. Challenges with awareness and adoption of new programs or new technologies. The need for data standardization and the efficiencies that could be created through a centralized, streamlined workflow. And finally, a strong call to create a vehicle for additional public-private partnership. And in just a few moments, you will be able to review the solutions that our teams have created. But first, let's review the problem statements that have directed the team's work. Think about it. Really harkens back to the video that we saw. How might digitization drive transparency and increase fairness and affordability in mortgage lending? Or how might borrowers, lenders, loan aggregators, and infrastructure providers be better equipped to leverage digital approaches? And how might regulators consider current barriers to greater adoption of financial technology in the mortgage process? Today, you're going to see a host of proposed digital solutions that will help leverage and help improve direct-to-source data, data quality, adoption and implementation of new tools, the use of alternative data, and how to use the digital experience to create trust. So let's talk about the judging criteria. The judges will be using 3 key criteria to assess each of the proposed solutions. Fast. This is about ease of implementation. What would be the fastest prototype to develop into a market solution? Eureka. Which of the proposed prototypes is the most exciting or surprising or leverages the most creative idea? And lastly, jump. Which proposal, if implemented, would have the potential to be the most transformational and create the greatest impact? In addition, we also have an audience favorite award. Which solution is favored by you, the audience, both in the house and on the live stream? So take a minute to vote. We're going to be using Slido. And to do that, take a picture of this QR code. And for those of you who are live streaming, you can take a picture from your computer screen. If the QR code isn't working for you, you can actually go to slido.com and enter the code that you see above the QR code, 1192354. And you will be asked to vote for your own personal favorite. Teams, get ready. And don't forget, if you're fickle, Slido allows you to change your vote. So what about winning? So, none of the winning teams here at the FHFA Velocity Tech Sprint are going to be receiving an all-expense-paid vacation to Tahiti. Sorry. But as you all know, all the teams and all the participants are winners. And we are all grateful for your volunteer participation in this inaugural event. Now, let me introduce you to our illustrious panel of judges who have the unenviable job of critiquing today's demonstrations. Unfortunately, Chris Brummer was not able to make it with us today. But standing from left to right, I'm going to ask each of you to stand and greet the audience and also the people who are watching us live stream. First, we have Delicia Hand, Director of Financial Fairness at Consumer Reports, where she is creating a reliable... Thank you, but I'm going to ask you to hold your applause. Where she's creating a reliable and iterative testing framework for digitized finance and leads the organization's marketplace change strategy on consumer-friendly financial innovation. Next, we have Melissa Quady, CEO and founder of FinReg Lab, a nonprofit, okay. A nonprofit innovation center that tests new technologies and new uses of data to inform public policy and drive the financial sector toward a responsible and inclusive financial marketplace. Next, we have Faith Schwartz, founder and CEO of Housing Finance Strategies. Faith has dedicated her career to help modernize the mortgage industry. She was a moderator of one of our panels earlier this week, and personally, I have the honor of having served with Faith on the CFPB Consumer Advisory Board. Next, we have Steve Majerus. Steve, did I pronounce your name correctly? No. How do I pronounce your name? Majerus. Steve Majerus. CEO of Synergy One, a technology platform that's designed to support loan officers. Steve has been a force in digital transformation for the mortgage industry for a couple of decades, dating back to his time with eLoan in the late 1990s. And lastly, we have David Coleman, President of Mortgage Industry Standards Maintenance Organization, or MISMO. And in this role, David is responsible for developing standards that improve efficiency, deliver interoperability, and accelerate the mortgage industry digital transformation. And David, you're going to hear a lot today. In Jason's language, so how is this going to work today? Judges, as a reminder, each team is going to have 5 minutes to present. And for each team, I will provide a 1-minute warning and ask the team to close their presentation at exactly 5 minutes. And teams, if you are not yet done, please be respectful of the other teams and stop where you are. Judges, at this point, you will have only 3 minutes to engage the teams with questions. Please raise your hand, and as I call on you, please remember to keep your questions very short and succinct so as not to burn the presenter's team time. And now, using Jason's language, showtime. This is the moment that you've all been waiting for, the demonstration of our team's work to create new technology solutions that can make the mortgage process more inclusive and more efficient. Judges, please make sure your microphones are on and be prepared to note questions. Starting with Team 1, Trust.me. Please come up and share your presentation on the screen, and I will start the clock once you're settled and ready to go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are Trust.me, and we're here to blow up the spot. Imagine a world where we have an open source protocol, multi-channel, omni-channel, multi-party participant utility consortium that has shared governance, compliance, risk, all participants into the mortgage industry, and oversight all in place for all to join for the benefit of the consumer. All participants are welcome. Stack of numbers to share for everyone. One use case we chose was the underserved, 45 million invisible and low, thin credit files. 45 million people that have alternative data, or let's call it something else, truth data. Use truth data and you have trust. Low and thin files of 45 million people. Last year we had a market that did 2.4 trillion in mortgages, 5.4 million units. If we did 1/9 of those people that have been researched that have positive cash flow based on their alternative credit using non-biased intelligence and analytics, we just doubled the ecosystem, blew up what we've been dealing with decades. Facts are truth and truth is trust. We all talk about trusting it. You don't have to trust it. It's truth data. We start looking at the truth. We start looking at the trust. That's what we need to know. Looking at invisibles, making them visible. Life of loan guidance, helping people from the beginning of their journey, not knowing when they want to get into the system, but knowing that they are empowered with their own data. Tokenizing their data, making sure that they have private, secure information that they can share. It's called the intention economy. This term's been around for probably 11 years. A book written by Doc Searles talked about this. It's synonymous with Web 5. Taking reading, writing, and possession of data and shifting the control. We're flipping the script, folks. We're taking control from business, we're moving it to consumers, and the consumer is going to control their information, share their information, possess it securely and safely for sound lending decisionings when they want to do it, and they will also benefit. Tokenization, a representation of value. This is a way that they can have protected, personal identifiable information that they can share whenever they want, however they want, and turn from invisible to visible. We have created the ACCI, Augmented Consumer Confidence Index, a non-biased approach to lending decisioning, mathematically deterministic based on what cash flow is going in, what's going out, looking at all data sources. Safe and sound lending decisions, no bias, inclusive living decisions, all tokenized.
Great. We will now highlight the key tenets of the Trust Me ecosystem. First and foremost, it will require the creation of a utility-based open network through the conversions of personal financial management, mortgage technology, tools, and procedures, along with MISMO standards, all combined in a way that supports a set of plug-and-play capabilities for network participants, including the consumer. Think of this as Bluetooth for the mortgage, all of which would be governed through a consortium of shared government-sponsored agencies, regulatory bodies, and private industry domain experts. Additionally, and most importantly, as we have heard, we are looking to flip the script by moving from a set of lender-centric processes to a consumer-empowered system that drives how and when they want engagement to occur. This will allow for a consumer to establish a preemptive relationship with a lender by building trust, confidence, understanding, and readiness prior to entering the home buying experience.
1 minute.
To demonstrate, we will now show a sample application of the user's journey of someone with a thin credit file and who was considered invisible, who will now be enabled to participate in the intention economy.
So as we see with the example here, Hannah, previously invisible, now becoming visible with a number between 1 to 100, non-biased approach, determination of ability to pay. Hannah now becomes a prime candidate, immersed into the ecosystem, and can now search for a loan. Trust.me is safe and sound, using non-biased analytics and intelligence, utilizing the truth data. In summary, you'll see how Hannah now has become visible as she shared her data, the alternative data. This is also for you, all of us. Detonation has occurred. Trust.me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trust.me, and right on time. Congratulations. Great role model to set for all the teams. Judges, and a reminder that we want to make sure that we keep our questions very short. We'll have a 3-minute session now. For those of you who have questions, please raise your hand, and I will go ahead and call on you. We're starting the clock now. Yes, Faith.
Great presentation. So the consumer has the power, you're flipping the script, they go into the lenders, it's kind of a consumer demand, and all the lenders are at the whims of the consumer, is that right?
Yeah, if you think about it, right, is that you've got your digital identity that, right, again, as you mentioned, it's an open platform. And so the consumer says, I am bringing myself to you, instead of now where I have gone to the lender and they say, okay, now connect yourself.
Thank you.
Great. Next question. Melissa.
What's the economic model? How is this funded?
The consumer goes in tokenized, so a credit profile is created. And now that they're in the ecosystem, the lender now can decide on an auction type of style and look at this as an additional customer that has come into their banking system, and it becomes an additional lead for someone who previously would not be considered.
How does the consumer engage preemptively with the lender so as to not have any negative impact on their score? Can you talk a bit more about that?
And so to your point, right, the Trust.me, what we kind of talked about, we're going into, right, an omni-channel solution that we're really focusing on the residential finance, is that this is their entire persona, right? They go get a car loan. So this is something, you know, they get a car loan, credit card, whatever the case might be. And so this is where we will have to have partnership here so that we can educate consumers. You know, one of the things we even kicked around is you get an iPhone, you get a new Android phone. You have the app that's already installed, right? That's where we would need government assistance and oversight to help educate the consumer. Oh, sorry.
To add on that, the consumer engagement is also amplified by rewards and other engagement type of gamifying by education, earning points and rewards. Just like we see today, you see a lot of that with the Gen Z and the millennial market, where a lot of the data, they want to have that data under their control, they want to share it, they want to have all dashboards, and they want to have wallets to store all this and share it whenever they want.
We have a little bit less than 1 minute left. Can we get another question? Steve?
How would the consumer identify when they're ready to transact so that a lender knew they were there raising their hand?
And I think we showed it briefly. So to your point, it's that because you live in Trust.me, is that it's always, they have a dashboard where they all can always see, hey, here's where you're at, right? The ACCI is an ever-changing number, and so they can see at that moment. And so there's the opportunity for the education to be there. Hey, you're at 88, you're 89, right? You're a prime candidate to whatever, you know.
Yep. Through like a single click. So in that dashboard, there's, you know, the relationship's already been established.
Sorry, we're at time.
Oh, okay. So single click.
Thank you, guys. Good answer.
Trust.me, thank you very much. Thank you for that proposed solution, and judges, thank you for your questions. Next up, Team 2, Home Renew. Please come up and share your presentation, and when you're ready, we will start the clock. Right, go.
Good morning. My name is Garrett Hartzog, and I am here to proclaim to you that the American dream is still alive. But let's face it, it's seen better days. We've all seen the headlines. There is a shortage in terms of the housing units available. Affordability is at an all-time low. Our housing stock is getting older. Of the people who live in their own homes, only a quarter of them live in a home that's been built in this century. And as these homes get older, there's deferred maintenance. They become out of date. Some of them dealing with lead pipes even. And for homeowners, renovation is a scary prospect, especially for those looking to enter the housing market. Thankfully, we have the solution. It is my privilege to be able to introduce to you Home Renew.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Janelle Linsa. Thank you for your time. So when you think about renovation lendings, there are solutions and programs to meet those needs today, but they have some definite headwinds that they're facing. A lot of the people who might need those types of loans don't know that they exist. They don't know that they can get a mortgage and cash to repair that home all at one time. Or the process is very overwhelming to consumers, to realtors, to lenders, investors. It's overwhelming to everyone, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Our focus today really is on the consumer. We want to convert low to moderate income renters into homeowners. We want to renovate aging homes to contemporary standards. So the mission of Home Renew as a nonprofit is to make renovation loans available to people just like these. By renovating homes, we're able to renovate communities to make them more livable. Here's how it works. So an aspiring homeowner would tell us a little bit about them and their needs. How many bedrooms and bathrooms do they need? Do they need access to public transportation or to live in an area that's walkable to the grocery store? Once we have that information, we present them with listings of properties that might have deferred maintenance and meet the program parameters for the existing programs for renovation lending. After they've selected the property, in our UI, they have some options. Here on the left-hand side, we present them with the opportunity to add to cart different projects that they'd like to do to this property. At the top, there are things that we take into consideration based on the age and the condition of the property. And then below that, they can dream a little. Do they want to do a kitchen renovation or a bath refresh based on the pictures that they see for that property? Then on the right-hand side, we have an overview or a summary of the purchase price for the property, how much it's going to take for the renovation based on what they've added to their cart there on the left-hand side, what their total investment is, their estimated payment, and their estimated after renovation value. So then we want to help them to understand how to make it happen. The first thing that we do then to help them understand how to make it happen is to give them a task list. These are all the things that you need to do this renovation. The consumer may not themselves do the work, they may hire a general contractor, but it gives them a good understanding of these are the steps that you need to do in this order to make this happen, and this is how much time and cost is associated with that.
1 minute.
We then connect them with different people who can help them make their dream a reality. Lenders, contractors who have been approved, and also grants and down payment assistance searches to make that happen. So there's data and cutting edge tech to support this, things like aerial imagery, which can suggest that we might need to consider a new roof. Now, when we think about this, not only, while we're focused on the consumer, there's certainly some renovation that could be done at the policy level as well. Renovating and standardizing the policy provides greater affordability and availability to consumers and greater access to lenders. The dream is still alive. Let's make it a reality.
Thank you. Team 2, Home Renew. So judges, do we have any questions for Home Renew? David.
Quick question, who would stand up and operate this program, this effort?
That's a great question. I think that that's something that it would be a combined effort. Probably Fannie, Freddie, FHA potentially could work together because it's going to really drive and improve the pipeline for those existing programs we have today by educating the public and help them to better understand the options that are available to fix these things.
And also, this would also make it far easier for people to do the first look program for the GSE REO portfolio, so we can get more of those homes into the hands of homeowners as opposed to larger investors.
Excellent. Faith.
Yes, how large an impact would you say this would have on the population? Who'd be eligible for this again?
So I think it's multifaceted. Certainly low to moderate income buyers or first-time home buyers who there might be a home that they'd like to have, but it needs work, and that's very overwhelming. But in addition to that, multi-generational families might use this as an option to put an addition or an ADU or guest house on their property. And also those that are elderly or otherwise could use this for mobility challenges and provide accessibility within their home.
Thank you.
Next question, Melissa.
I own a 1923 home. I like this. We're probably not supposed to say that right now.
Thank you.
But the matchmaking is that in many respects what you're doing? Because doing repairs is complicated. There's search costs. It's time.
That's exactly it. Many of the pieces exist today. It's pulling it all together, putting it in one place, simplifying it, and demystifying how this works. And so, connecting with the lenders, connecting with the contractors, bringing in grants or down payment assistance program search so they can see all those things in one place and truly understand what it would mean to make this project a home.
Yeah.
Here's my question. How are you all helping to sort of, through competition on the providers, affect the price of what it takes to renovate? How is the technology and the data enabling?
Really, I would say the technology, first and foremost, is designed to level up the average homeowner or potential homeowner. In terms of the competition, right, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have approved contractors getting on there, and really, it's the visibility of the potential price and the understanding of, like, this home could use this or this home could use that. And really, an educated consumer who understands all that's involved when they go out to contractors, they're going to be in a better place to understand the bids they're getting back and to shop around.
Thank you very much, Team Home Renew. And so this is a theme that you're going to be seeing today is many of these solutions are taking and linking together multiple projects that already exist, but we can use technology to centralize them and make a single workflow possible. The next team is Team 3, Tech Talk. Whoa! Tech Talk, when you're set up and ready to go, let us know.
Okay, I'm good.
Are you good? All righty, let's begin.
We are Tech Talk. Like a similar sounding name, we are looking for quick rise in household fame, creating buzzworthy content, and inspiring digital change. Meet Sammy, our brand ambassador and first Velocity Home Program participant. Sammy has a very familiar story. Sammy is a Gen Z entrepreneur. They want to own a home in Arkansas, but Sammy is struggling to find affordable homes. Creating new technology is not our goal today. It's incentivizing the adoption of existing technology. We have created an end-to-end solution focused on successful homeownership for underserved LMI and first-time homebuyers. But this has the power to accelerate the adoption of data-first digital mortgages across the board. This program includes multiple components, keeping the borrower at the center. Today's area of focus is on our proposal to create affordable housing supply. Unlocking this supply source will accelerate our digital-first mortgage program, Velocity Home. Let's check in with one of our Tech Talk content creators, Terry, to learn more.
Thanks, Brittany. So how do we unlock affordable housing supply? Two big sources, investors and distressed loans. Investor and second homes account for 15 million units, 70% of which are owned by individual investors. And additionally, despite delinquencies at historic lows, there are almost 1 million units in trouble. And we believe that FHFA, perhaps in collaboration with Ginnie Mae, can shape loss mitigation policy and REO strategies that additionally contribute to housing inventory. How do we incent investors to sell, and how do we aggregate affordable housing inventory so it's visible to Sammy? Well, we propose that there is a special purpose vehicle, a REIT or something like it, stood up by a consortium of lenders to purchase and aggregate inventory. Investors are incented to sell eligible property into the program with tax credits or capital gains relief, very similar to what's available in opportunity zones today. The REIT is initially funded by lenders in exchange for the opportunity to serve eligible borrowers in the program. The operating expenses for the REIT would be paid by a small fee collected by the asset manager in the transactions of buying and selling these properties. How do we connect Sammy to this new supply with lenders who are offering the program? Prospective homebuyers like Sammy find eligible properties from common real estate search portals like Zillow or realestate.com. Properties are tagged as eligible for a Velocity Home Finance program. Interested buyers are navigated to a HomePath-like website with available inventory and an overview of the program. The Velocity Home program is introduced through content, videos, and gamification. It incorporates a digital-first mortgage with a list of specific benefits of using a paperless approach for the home buying journey. It includes up to $500 in savings in closing costs, and it provides a list of select lenders that provide competitive rates and service offering the program. Our team's point of view is that consumers will choose a digital path when they understand the benefits and the process, and we seek to make that decision or that choice less dependent on the loan officer delivering that message, which leads me to the topic of a lender adoption. According to a recent Strathmore study, the top 3 reasons that lenders cite as barriers to adopting a digital mortgage are cost, difficulty getting loan officers to adopt, and IT development limitations. Let's face it, lenders have competing priorities. We believe the GSEs can accelerate adoption by offering delivery incentives in the form of certain rep and warrant relief, reverse loan level price adjustments for loans delivered with direct source verification data, and an e-note. This is not new ground. The GSEs paid up for DU and LP underwritten loans and offered rep and warrant relief to drive adoption of DU and LP for several years. It worked then, and it will work now. The Velocity Home program starts with building an affordable housing supply that is made available to eligible underserved LMI and first-time home buyers. It provides a portal that connects buyers and valuable resources with lenders that will lead with a digital-first mortgage, and the GSE delivery incentives will accelerate lender adoption. Let's go.
Time. Thank you.
TikTok out.
Thank you, Team 3, Team Tech Talk. All right, judges, we have an opportunity to ask questions.
And we're going to leverage our team as well for.
Yes, when we have a mic available. Faith.
That was really interesting. Who would subsidize the capital at the REIT level to buy from investors to sell and offload all of their existing houses?
So we thought of that as a consortium of lenders. Nolan might want to speak to this.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways it could happen. It could happen similar to a national community stabilization trust idea. It could happen on a capital light structure as well. It's just an asset manager, like a servicer, where you would just clip a 1% fee to pass through that asset into the platform, which would then set that asset in motion to the borrowers along with the digitization of the technology and the programs and the products put forth by FHFA, Fannie, and Freddie.
Thank you.
Great, next question. Chris?
How much of this would require, in order to meaningfully reduce the prices, right, in terms of a timing level, how much coordination would you have to have within that consortium in order to sort of push that price point down? Because it seems to me that you need a little bit of a big bang approach in order to sort of bend the curve for pricing. Is that correct? And if so, do you think that just by getting sort of FHFA involved, that will be enough to ignite that kind of collective action?
Can I ask to clarify, are you talking about the price of the mortgage or the price of the home?
Yeah, I was thinking the mortgage, but hey, if you want to talk about the home, then go for it.
We didn't imagine a discounted price for the mortgage. It's a fair market price for the mortgage.
Great. David?
So I'm still a little lost as to what's different from what exists today, where you've got websites that have homes that are available for sale, and you've got lenders that are making loans, and you've got the effort around digital platforms. What's different?
Amen. I'm glad you asked, because we believe the technology exists to drive the adoption of a digital mortgage today, and a lot of the issues are adoption related. And framing things in a program that connects the targeted borrower for this FHA initiative, which is first-time homebuyer, low, mod, and underserved. There is underlying this access to additional expanded credit programs and other kinds of solutions that require data standards that would benefit the process. But the big idea here is let's link it all together to create a gravy train that drives adoption in the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have time for another question, but thank you very much, Team Tech Talk. Thank you. And let me just take a moment right now to introduce Chris Brummer, who has joined us with the judging. And Chris is a professor at Georgetown Law. So welcome, Chris. And for team number one, he's going to be recusing himself from your presentation, so you will not be dinged. All right. Our next team, Team 4. Home for All.
So thank you, everybody. So I want to introduce you to Team Home for All. And our goal here is that no aspiring home buyer is left behind. So if you want to take out your phones, you'll have a chance to see the QR code at the end. Just a hint. So we've talked a lot about today and throughout the week about today's reality is when are people going to be mortgage ready or near mortgage ready? When you do not have people that are credit visible, or you have people that are in underserved communities, are they ready for a mortgage? But more importantly, how do they know if they're ready for a mortgage? Most people don't know even where to begin the journey. In the presentation on Monday, when John Hope Bryant talked about his father being a brilliant man, but yet not having any idea how to go about owning a home, how do people that are traditionally underserved understand what it takes to start the journey to become a home buyer? And as you go on that journey, how do you make the best decisions that are going to make you the most successful? So how do we arrive at that? We arrive at that with home.gov. So if you look at a parallel, look at healthcare.gov. It was created to educate consumers about healthcare insurance and provide a portal for them to begin a journey. Many people are served through their employers, but a large percentage of people are not served at all with the traditional insurance market. Home.gov addresses similar challenges for those aspiring to become homeowners, providing them a personalized financial education, a personalized journey that takes them from no file, no information to a pre-verified, purchase-ready consumer, letting them securely build a profile about their ability to pay, utilizing both trusted government data sources like IRS and SSA, and then linking in direct source data from their financial institutions and their payroll providers, and delivering that in a friendly chat-based experience to determine what their next steps are and how do they find their best fit for becoming a successful homeowner. So we know today, not everybody's going to come into the process as ready to get a mortgage. So what happens? Maybe you're not mortgage ready, but how do you become mortgage ready? So the idea with home.gov is to take you on that journey. How do you establish bank accounts, build a credit score, begin to save for a down payment, and then find out about those agencies that exist throughout the country to provide down payment resources, credit counseling. How do you become ready to buy a home? Now, if you are mortgage ready, what are you going to do? How do you find the right loan programs that work specifically for you? And through an understanding of where you are in your journey, home.gov will take you in a very directed way to be able to do that. So the home.gov portal, it's a way for consumers to very quickly understand where they are, what they can do, and how do they begin that interaction. So it's not just about information, but it's about having a conversation. And that conversation is between Harmony and, in this case, Sammy. So Harmony is our chatbot that not only knows about how the home buying journey works, but it links the data that Sammy can securely share with the portal. So linking into services like ID.me, to link directly into my IRS data, my SSA data, my military data. Now I know as Harmony who this person is that's trying to get home, and I can direct the questions that I want to be able to ask this person. At the same time,
1 minute.
Now I can securely link in information utilizing technology that exists today that's in use by the GSEs to be able to pull in direct source bank data, direct source payroll data, and build a holistic view of a consumer's ability to pay, putting the consumer at the center. Now, this is going to require blowing up some things. For example, why is a credit report tied to a lender for a specific loan application? A credit report belongs to me, so I want to be able to control it. So a home.gov wallet that puts me, my financial data, at the center of the process that I can then securely share with lenders and become that pre-verified, ready-to-close homeowner when it comes into their pipes. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Home for All. And judges, please have your questions prepared. Faith, thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Are we relying on the federal government to organize this whole?
Absolutely. So if you look at the investments, and really the analogy around healthcare.gov is the one that really directed us to this. And when I looked for home.gov and saw that it wasn't being used, that was like, okay, we've got to go in this direction. So out of the, I think it was the CARES Act, there was $50 million was spent on direct consumer marketing for healthcare.gov. And it's, I think, incumbent on the government to be able to deliver this message in a broad based way. I don't think it's the responsibility of the GSEs to deliver that message directly to consumers. Their messaging needs to be to the lenders as to how do they integrate and adopt the information from this program.
Thank you.
Chris, next question.
So just to be clear, so once these data are generated, right? Because obviously there's going to be an interaction with the chatbot, and you'll have all these answers. And you mentioned this wallet. Are the data from the conversation stored at the level of the wallet? Like, who holds
Your
that
consumer.
data?
The consumer. It's your data.
Is it like literally? How does that work? Like where is it? Is it being held, you know, on a mobile phone? Is it being held on the cloud? I'm asking because everyone's going to ask what kind of privacy and security.
Absolutely. So if you think about it, the way that open banking has evolved with tokenization. So the critical thing here with this is that it's not a static snapshot of the data. Think of the wallet more as holding those tokens that have that real-time link. Because when I want to take my wallet and present it to a lender, I want to be able to say, this is the most current data. Here's my link to Bank of America. Here's my link to ADP payroll. Here's my link to SSA. Here's my link to the IRS. And now the lender can see my up-to-date information and know that I have the ability to pay for this mortgage.
Excellent. Next question.
Could you explain a little bit more when you talked about blowing up the credit reporting and part of things and putting the consumer in control of that? What do you mean?
Well, why should a consumer be penalized because a lender wants to look at their credit file to understand if they have the capacity for doing a loan? Now, the industry gets around it through soft pull versus hard pull, but consumers don't understand it. They've been conditioned to know if somebody looks at my credit report, it's bad. But why should it be bad? If it's my information about why I can participate in this financial transaction, I, as the consumer, should have it. It should just exist with me. The bureaus can be the ones that can still bring the data in, but if I'm the one that's controlling the access to the data, then it's there to benefit me and to benefit me in becoming a better participant in the economy.
So this would facilitate continual access by a consumer to their own credit.
That's the idea behind tokenization. Okay. Tokenization controls the link, but it doesn't hold the data.
Time. Thank you very much. Thank you, judges.
Thank you.
Thank you, Home for All. And we've started to see these themes really emerge and show up, right? This is an example of a need for public-private partnership. So really interesting. Team 5, Speed Racer. Oh, wait, hold on, Team 5, 1 second. We have a little advertisement here. For those of you who have not yet voted or have not yet linked into, oh, sorry, this is Home for All. Sorry, bring it up. I thought this was our QR code. Home for All, welcome. Please set up your presentation, and when you're ready to go, we'll start the clock.
The high cost of lending has really impacted Sammy's ability to buy a home. In fact, she's had to rent for a year longer than she wanted to. And $1,600 of those loan costs are really avoidable. The lender that she'd like to use, Northwestern Bank, uses automated underwriting tools supplied by the GSEs, and yet they're still dedicating a high degree of manual labor, effort, resources to checking, rechecking, and re-verifying data that they already have. Why is this? It's not because of a lack of automation tools, it's because of a lack of trust. In fact, there's no way to consistently trust data during the loan process. And this lack of ability causes $2 billion of avoidable costs in just 2023 alone, if we look at the loan volume for this year. So what's needed? What's needed is a centralized authority for trust in order to validate the peer-to-peer exchange of data. We've already heard about this a lot today. So what we would like to propose is the creation of a uniform data trust platform that allows direct source data providers to be vetted, first of all, so that they're trusted providers, and then two, to be able to authenticate and sign that their data has not been altered since the last time it was checked. We're not talking about a data repository here or holding data in some central place. What we're just talking about is the actual protocol, method, and framework by which people can sign that their data has not been changed since it has been authenticated. There's an example for this that all of you probably use every day on the internet, which is that when you go to a specific website, that domain actually has a certificate authority that verifies the owner of the domain and assigns a key. That's how you know when you go to google.com that it's actually Google providing that site. And then the domain owner signs their website with that key. And then web browsers check every time you browse that that signature is actually registered with the certificate authority. We're proposing a similar thing for our industry, which is that a central authority like the FHFA would vet data providers and assign them unique keys. And then those data providers would sign their data that they're delivering into the loan process using that key. And then lenders would use a public key to verify that that data has not changed. We don't need anything fancy like blockchain or overkill. We can use the existing technology that's been in process for decades. So I'm going to turn it over to Don to talk about how it works.
So I'm just going to introduce some of the players here. We have the Trust Authority, UDTP. We have some data providers. Now, a couple of these data providers, they're actually vetted and are participating in UDTP. They, of course, are issued signing keys to sign their data. This payroll provider, though, is not participating in the program. And so what's happening here is this trusted aggregator is going to provide data on their behalf, but that means they're going to be responsible for the accuracy of the data they provide. What that means in this entire ecosystem is that this broker can now trust the data they're getting from these providers because they've been vetted, and when they pass that same data on to the lender can actually verify and trust the accuracy of that data because they can verify it through the trust authority. There's some more details in an appendix slide if you're interested.
So with this trusted framework, Sammy finally has, number one, a trusted path for being able to share data, not docs. So we talked a lot already today about a lot of opportunities for borrowers to share their own data and consumers to control their data. This provides the path for lenders to actually be able to trust that data and not re-verify it over and over again. We think this leads to an 8-day faster closing experience with less cost. And Northwestern Bank can finally stop checking the checker and employing people there to recheck data over and over again throughout the loan process. And they can check data status, has that data changed or not, instead of opening up docs and staring at them over again. This also lets lenders onboard new direct source data providers with less vetting costs up front. There's upstream and downstream benefits of this. There's opportunities to enable consumer engagement earlier in the process to start to share their data and see if they're financially ready. But also downstream, this has benefits as well, where servicers can check status of data as opposed to not knowing when things have changed until they actually look at docs. This will actually let them know that something has changed, and it can be an early warning system to help borrowers stay in their homes.
Thank you. Time. Thank you, Team Speed Racers. Judges, Melissa.
What are the criteria that are used to verify the data sources for level of trust to be generated?
It'd be a similar criteria to what's used right now for third-party oversight, and the data vetting that goes into what, like data uncertainty that Fannie has and Freddie LP. There's a vetting process today for data providers to provide data into the automated underwriting systems. This will be very similar to that, but now this will be available to all participants and not just the GSEs.
Chris?
Could you please just go back to your slide showing the overall ecosystem? Where exactly are you then in that ecosystem? Just for clarity.
Sure. So this is a.
No, I mean.
The diagram.
The diagram. Yeah.
Got it. So it's the top box, the UDTP, the trusted aggregator identity box.
Okay.
So that's actually what's providing the keys, the private keys for data providers, as well as the public keys for lenders to check to see whether or not data has changed.
Very helpful.
Yeah, very similar to, you could replace that whole box with the name VeriSign, and you would have an understanding of exactly how that's done today.
Judges, next question. David.
So, quick question. You were talking about the final step was a validation of the data that you just supposedly pulled from a reliable third-party source and brought it over, and then you got to validate it. Help me with that step.
Almost. So what happens here is these providers have been vetted, and so they can trust that they don't really benefit from the signing quite as much because they're dealing with a trusted provider. But when they pass that same data on to other parties, which happens a fair bit, that's where the signing and the verification step comes into play. They can trust the accuracy of the data because they can verify it.
So instead of going direct to the source every time you need to look at that data, you've pulled a copy and now you've taken a copy and you pass it from player to player to player to player.
Correct.
Exactly. Which reduces cost, because every single time there's a pull today, there's costs associated with that.
Okay.
We think about $1,600 per loan.
Okay.
You're at MISMO, so think of smart docs. It's similar, but without the docs.
Judges, next question. Melissa.
Liability.
So actually, this increases accountability because the direct source provider that signed that and authenticated the data was what it was at that time. This allows downstream stakeholders to trace it all the way back to the person who actually signed and authenticated the delivery of the data.
I'm guessing you're thinking about the trusted aggregator, assuming responsibility.
I'm afraid we're at time.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Team Speed Racers. All right. Now we have our advertisement. For those of you in the audience who've not yet signed up for Slido, here's your opportunity. And for those of you who are following us on the live stream, please take a photograph of this QR code or sign in at slido.com. Our next team, Team 6, Finnovation. Judges, please prepare your questions and let us know when you're ready to go.
Thank you, everyone.
In April, I moved hospital systems and scheduled a routine mammogram. 3 days later, I received a message that I needed a diagnostic mammogram. Because the old healthcare provider did not have e-medical records, I had to drive to the new provider, wet sign a document to release the images. I then waited 2 weeks where I played out every catastrophic possibility that could happen to find out 2 weeks later that everything was okay based off of my baseline. If I had a digital medical chart that I owned, I would have electronically pushed that data prior to, and I would have eliminated 2.5 weeks of the process, saving me from the worry and the mental anguish. We all know the problem in mortgage lending today. As a mortgage company, regardless of your size, the decades-old paper-intensive, intrusive process is way too long, costs too much money, and is bogged down by too many options. At the same time, the archaic process could potentially cause disparate impact. Mark, big, hairy, audacious problems deserve big, hairy, audacious solutions. Please tell us what Finovation is doing to revolutionize the way that mortgages are done today.
The solution is called Fin. This is Fin, named after Finovation. Fin is a MERS-like industry cooperative technology utility that houses consumer-owned data that automates all upfront verifications. The goals behind this and what this is driving towards, number one, removes barriers for consumer and lender to instantly access verified historical KYC and Fin data through a direct agency connection. The data is already there. There should be nobody else meddling with that. We should bring that and remove that barrier is what's being proposed. It also converts unqualified legitimate income data into additional qualified income data. That's a common theme here, but the reality is that a lot of low-income, underbanked communities, they are using all kinds of ways to get paid. They all have side hustles. They are using Cash App to all kinds of pay tech. There's no reason we can't all find a way to legitimize that income to put more loans through FHFA's pipe. Educate consumers in a new way. I think there's a lot of, nobody wants to maybe take direct responsibility of it, but it's a collaborative amongst everybody, right? And so we're talking about a collaborative, like a MERS-like situation where you have many experts feeding that education. You're using new tools such as AI, ChatGPT. I know it's new, but one of the best applications discovered thus far is that it's great as a math tutor for kids. There's a lot of financial education tools coming out, such as Greenlight, which is great. My kids have it. Teaches them how to understand the stock market and understand, what makes you home loan ready. And lastly, establish a mutual winning solution for all stakeholders impacted, including consumers, number one, agencies, because they have to see the value in it. Everybody has to win there as well, and the lenders as well. So we've actually created a working prototype because we've got a smart guy named James on our team, and this is a concept. So the idea is that we would also ping into ID.me. The IRS has already vetted this. It's working great. There's no reason from day one why this can't automatically pull in all the KYC data and all historical Fin data. So you're getting tax returns, you're getting the income, you're getting the verification employment. A lender shouldn't even have to get that or be responsible for the fraud of that. It's already there by the IRS. They've already vetted it. The lender at the same time could be going after adding all additional income, and how can they help the consumer? How can they be that expert to advise along the way? You would need deep bank asset analysis. You could reach out to third-party expert companies to come in and play a role there. So the idea is there's layers in this system. The top layer, full automation. Concurrently,
1 minute.
Concurrently, companies are going after additional income, and you're minimizing any manual practices today down to less than 5%. So how does everybody win? Consumer wins, less intrusive data, more transparency, and home readiness, AI-driven education. Also tracking a bias divide along the way. How can we improve bias? Agencies win, FHA, IRS. I can talk to you more about how the IRS wins. And lenders win, of course, too. And how does this help the industry?
$3 million in average verification savings. We analyzed what the average cost was, multiplied it by the number of 2022 units of Fannie and Freddie together to derive $300 million worth of savings, not including the FTE cost savings and potential post-closing repurchase savings for the lender. The time is now. It's a call to action. We can make a difference. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Team 6, Finovation. Okay. Judges, Faith.
Yes, Dan, that was really interesting. How are you going to ensure lenders of all sizes can access and become part of the cooperative like anything? 30 or 40 might dominate a system.
I think there would need to be stewardship amongst FHFA and the GSEs to select the appropriate lenders, sophisticated enough to be part of that. There'd probably be a rotating, selection every so many years, like a board of directors. So you would treat it with stewardship in that manner.
Yeah, thank you.
Next question, Melissa.
Real quick, are you contemplating IRS verification ID.me for both identity as well as tax data?
Absolutely, that's the short-term plan. The long-term plan is to also bring in credit reporting data, all of the borrower's own data into it, but with the IRS data to be able to derive and verify W-2 income and get source data for self-employed, and also include a calculation so that it is consistent across all agencies to what that calculation is and it's coming over, so we're not leaving it to the lender to underwrite it.
Being ex-Treasury, do you contemplate IRS being paid for this service?
Yes, a couple solutions, but one, yes, actually. So with these other pay-tech systems, they can't qualify or, get that income taxes qualified today through the IRS. So we would propose that the IRS does not charge a penalty or interest for a homeowner, a potential homeowner buying a home in that moment. There would be a payback plan that could be associated for a program, and then the IRS gets to collect tax revenue they would not otherwise have. So that would be the incentive to get the IRS involved.
Faith, follow-up question?
Yep, just a quick one. How fast would you get this up and running?
I think it could be done, it's the same year, immediately. It's already there. It's just bridging an API through this collaborative, and then there would be plenty of room for third-party private companies and bring their expertise into this system.
Actually start today by bringing in the IRS data through a third-party service that already is accessing that data, and also the borrower's bank account information. We could bring that in immediately today behind the framework that James built.
Thank you.
Excellent. Time for one more question.
She stole my question, but just as a last little follow-up on the IRS. I mean, in your last comment that there's already someone out there, how much coordination then for each of these sort of directions, whether or not it be FHFA or whether or not it be with the IRS, if you can get that started right now, does that mean there's no barrier at all to entry for you to begin as soon as you've stated?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a very good, challenging question. I think there's always going to be barriers to overcome, but I think if everybody wins, in my past company, when you find a solution where everybody wins, you can overcome those barriers, and that's what we would need to focus on. FHFA would be the steward custodian of that. You could contract whatever experts you need along the way to get through that.
That's a great note to end on. Everybody wins.
Thank you, everyone.
Team 6, Finovation, thank you so much for your proposal. All right, our next team up is Team 7, Minnie May. Judges, please prepare your questions. And remember to ask your questions very succinctly. We've been doing great. Get your presentation ready and let us know when you're ready. Oh, that doesn't work.
Oh. Hi and good morning. My name is Teresa Grobecker.
And I'm Alex Lang, and we are Team Minnie May, My Information Now Instant.
And we believe in the power of the American dream. The thesis is simple. There must be a better way to originate loans. Minnie May streamlines the process, unlocks alternative data sources, and brings more inventory online. Friends, let's have an honest conversation. The current process sucks, and it's expensive. Gathering documentation is an unpleasant experience for the consumer. Validating this information is time-consuming and takes multiple audits. There must be a better way to enable our fellow countrymen and women to get into homes faster. Let's put a finer point on it. Please meet Paula. She's a Hispanic entrepreneur, and she's ready to purchase her first home. She's like a lot of Americans. She wants a fully renovated home,
but all she can afford is a $100,000 fixer. What appears to be a cheap home is actually more expensive. She has to put 20% down and is going to get charged 10% interest rate. Let's meet our lender, a conservative bank. This bank wants to lend more to Hispanics and millennials, but it struggles to build product to meet the consumer with their needs. Let's meet Tyler, our loan officer. Tyler wants to help Paula get into this home, but his hands are tied. His bank will not underwrite non-QM mortgages at low balance. With all these parties who want to help Paula, there must be a way to get this done. Introducing Mini May. We're small but mighty. The product is a consumer-enabled blockchain wallet. The platform works for lenders and capital markets. It's universal and interoperable. It works with banks and FedNow to read and interpret alternative data sets. Let's see how this works. Tyler invites Paula to the system. She connects with one click and uploads all of her statements. Paula is in complete control. We can see all of Paula's rental history, her utility payments, and her income from Venmo and Zelle. It's uploaded onto blockchain using the MISMO 3.2 standard. Paula tells the system to export her loan information into her loan application. The system instantly fills 80% of her 1003. Her data is 100% portable to multiple loan applications. Her information is valid and her data is validated and follows the loan for the entire loan lifecycle, from the application to loan servicing, using blockchain as the transport mechanism. And the end result? Paula moves into the house of her dreams. She gets a fully renovated house at a lower rate with only a 3% down payment. She pays less in fees. She moves into a home that she's proud of. Paula isn't the only one who wins. The lender also wins. The lender is able to underwrite more homes faster, reducing LO overhead costs. It can now issue more low balance loans that are more profitable. It engages with customers through the digital wallet. But wait, there's more. Capital markets also win. When this loan goes to secondary markets, the loans trade at a premium because of the validated full data set. It would appear that capital markets wag the dog. The path to success is simple. Build product that works, integrate into LOS systems, and build more sticky products for consumers. If you're like us, you believe that the American consumer deserves a better experience. Please vote for Mini May. Thank you.
I'll just jump in.
Sorry, go Chris.
No problem. So I guess first, just to be clear, what is it that you get by using a blockchain as opposed to any other database?
So blockchain is immutable, and the mechanism to transport information is called a non-fungible token. So that's a way for me to share a file with you. As this goes along, it also enables instant payments using the FedNow rails. So if I want to sell my information, I am no longer a lead on LendingTree. I get to I receive benefit. My data, I get to monetize.
Okay, and also just to be super clear, so you're not, so you're creating an NFT, but you're not actually putting the data itself on chain, right? You're just sort of hashing that data and you're putting it on chain. Is that
So we're proposing private, not public
permissioned,
blockchain. Yeah, fully permissioned, yeah. No crypto, not selling homes as NFTs either.
No, right. It's just in terms of information storage, in terms of like, how are you going to put all of that information on a blockchain? I'm just trying to walk through and think through what the mechanics would look like. How do you, if you could just, again, maybe walk us through that integration with FedNow and what you had in mind?
So FedNow talks to financial institutions, and it's a way to see the information that's been validated by all parties.
Great. Faith?
Yes, you know, one thing that's always a conundrum is all this great data in the very front of the business, and then it has to be ingested and workflow and underwriting in old legacy LOS or POS systems. Help us understand how you envision that flowing through those systems and executing.
Again, the consumer themselves, imagine all the information that you'd want to do to originate a loan.
Yeah.
What if I just always had that ready at all times?
Yeah.
Right, so when the lender first initiates and says, okay, typical consumer flow is I'm going to go get a pre-qual to figure out what I can afford. Then I go through the home searching process and buying process. Well, when they first do that initial, here's your pre-qual, this is when they want to kick off the process so that consumer's already starting to collect the data. At the end, when the LO is ready to start processing originating a loan, it makes a request because it's a wallet. The consumer then says, okay, I'm okay with this, and I'm pushing, and I'm allowing that data to go to you. It's actually being sent in a MISMA format to them. So it should just be ingested into their current LOS.
But it's not always, so that's part of the, right, so that's what I'm asking, the integration and the, you know, following all those data sets through, feels like it's still a conundrum in the business.
You know, so many of a large proportion of most loans are processed through basically two systems, and we're going to rewrite. We definitely write those integrations for them, so it's an easy hookup.
Okay.
So we
Thanks.
can write an
Awesome.
et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Team Minnie May, Team 7. I think we're going to be taking another voting break here. If you haven't already gotten your QR code, either here in the audience or on the live stream, please take this moment to capture the QR code. And remember, you have an opportunity to place your vote for the audience favorite. Okay, we have Team 8 joining us, Fidelis Data. Thank you, Team 8. Let us know when you're ready to go, and we'll start the clocks.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. We're Team Fidelis Data. So we'll start by telling everybody in the room what they probably already know with a quick State of the Union. Despite the exponential increase in technological innovation and adoption over the past several years, costs and time to close are ballooning. The cost of an average mortgage origination is at all-time highs at about $13,000. It takes on average 42 days from loan to close, and it's persisted that way for the past handful of decades. And it also takes 60 to 90 days on average to trade a single loan in the secondary markets. So why is this happening? We tried to diagnose the issue, and all roads lead back to one central tenet, which is data trust or lack thereof. And this lack of trust in the data creates a constant re-verification of the data across the ecosystem. And that ecosystem is vast. It spans all the way from the primary markets and borrowers and origination, all the way down to the secondary markets and MBS securitization, as you see on the right side of this page. So it's death by 1,000 cuts. So we have a vision here at Fidelis for a unified solution, and that's a verified, universally accessible, secure repository. That's a mouthful, so we branded it Fidelis One. That's our core product. You might ask, well, why hasn't this been done before? And the reason is technologies are more focused on solving specific problems, and no one has tried to solve the underlying broader ecosystem problem. This spurs innovation. It has a multiplier effect on the industry. This is a common data layer that other technologies can build on top of and spur innovations for generations to come. How are we going to structure it? So it's a public-private partnership. For fundamental change to happen, it requires a GSC standards roadmap, but privately funded.
And we'd like to really emphasize the impact that data has on the entire ecosystem. So in the current form, data is generally untrusted by every counterparty. Many people think the life of the loan ends at closing. It's actually the start of the rest of the loan's life. And throughout that life, whether that loan is traded, whether that loan is diligenced, serviced, or securitized, data is constantly revalidated. That's a problem. We estimate about 190 days over the life of the loan that's going through this process of revalidating data. We believe with trusted data, obviously our focus, we can get that down below 60 days over the life of the loan, a 70% reduction. Now, what does this really mean? The biggest impact is increased capital efficiency and flow of capital. That's what expands lending, that's what expands credit. It's flow of capital. Capital is locked up in every single point of this process. And if we can open up that flow of capital, it increases lending to other underserved markets, to underserved borrowers, and really starts to expand credit across the ecosystem. How are we going to do this? So our product is ingesting data and documentation. We run that documentation through a data extraction process, then an intelligent validation model, could include AI, ML, or other future technologies. We then run it through an exception handling process to make sure that data is accurate, and any data that was not able to be validated is now able to be validated. We then provide a Fidelis seal on that data and put that data directly into the repository. The seal is very important here because it proves the data has been validated and is accurate, and then we put it into the repository where it stays and is immutable over the life of the loan, along with the documents that have that data included in them. Obviously, as this is an immutable repository, Fidelis One, it allows innovation to come in. It accelerates innovation because people can now start to build on data that's been validated and verified up front. How do we work with the ecosystem? Once the Fidelis One repository is completed, has validated data, the rest of the ecosystem has access via API to this data. Warehouse lenders all the way through securitization market now have the ability to use the same data set, run analytics, run risk off of the same exact data set over the life of the loan.
So how does this benefit the borrower? It expands access to homeownership. In the frothiness of 2020 and 2021, a lot of lenders were focused on prime borrowers, and a lot of underrepresented borrowers got left behind. And so it frees up human capital at the lenders. Number two is cost. This lack of data trust results in constant re-verifications and excess due diligence costs. A lot of those are borne by the borrower. And then time to close, a better user experience for the borrower and applicant. Additional considerations, we won't have time to go into these today, but in closing, we're at a moment in history and a turning point in the industry, and we believe that Fidelis data is the trusted foundation and infrastructure needed to unlock this generation of new technologies. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Fidelis Data. Team 8, judges. Do you have any questions for Fidelis Data? Melissa.
Real quick, are you all essentially just standardizing the data so that I mean, verification, yes, but the really important function here is standardizing and verifying?
Yes, so this is something we would want to work with industry, so whether it's MISMO standards or other standards, to be able to, our focus on validation and lifetime storage of data attached to documents, right? So that's our main focus. The reason this is a public-private partnership is we would love to work with industry standards to decide what should be stored in this repository for all the future aspects of that loan.
And traceability is also important. Rather than trading 500-page PDFs, these are backlinkable and traceable to the underlying data source and citable.
Faith.
So the borrower owns their own data. How do they retain their privacy and control over that data in this kind of system? And who owns Fidelis?
So Fidelis is privately funded and owned, but will require GSE cooperation just so that there's a standards roadmap that we can build to. Right. And a lot of that's already established with D1C and LPA and a lot of the approved vendors. But the borrower does own their data, and a lot of that consent and permissible purpose will have to be clarified on the front end. And a lot of these parties that we showed on one of the slides already have access to this data, whether the borrower knows it or not.
Thank you.
Great. Judges. David.
So looking at your picture that you had where you had the LOS up front and you had the data repository, I mean, do you anticipate having pretty much all players in the industry, you know, all the way through, number one, you know, hook up to Fidelis One, and then number two, how does that interaction work as the loan is going through origination? Because data changes as it goes along, and you know, it needs to have, you know, different access, and the data comes in at different times. The LOS typically manages that workflow. So how does Fidelis One support that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll
sure.
answer that question. Yeah, so the re-verification process of, let's say, IDs or pay stubs or bank statements happens even.
And we're bringing you a mic so that the people on live stream can hear you.
Yes, that's a really good point. So when you extract the data and you push it back in on the origination, that re-verification process happens in multiple departments, even within the origination process. So there's still a huge efficiency, but having that data pushed back into the LOS, being able to reformat it into how a lender does it, and then trusting it so somebody doesn't have to re-verify the ID hasn't expired before closing, or the pay stub, or the consecutive. Those are real operational efficiencies that can happen inside the lender. And then now, when you go to an aggregator, you go to MI company, they don't have to strip off that data and review it manually.
Thank you. We're at time.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much, Team Fidelis Data. Next team up, Team 9, U-turn. Judges, please prepare your questions, and when the team gets settled, let us know, and we'll start the clocks.
Two million Americans attempted, but were unable to become homeowners in 2022. And that's nearly 1% of the entire adult population in the U.S. That 2 million is comprised of denied applications, applications closed for incomplete information, or applications withdrawn by the consumer. This represents $938 billion of potential mortgage originations, or almost 60% of the entire 2023 origination projected volume. Looking just at the denied home purchase application pool, nearly 60% of those were denied for either debt to income or credit history related reasons. That alone represents an addressable market of $196 billion in potential mortgage originations. We want to turn those no's into yeses. While some of these application denials are valid, many are rejected based on easily fixable problems. And this will change thanks to the no to yes machine, also known as N to Y. Meet Paula and Hannah. Notice how unhappy they are due to their mortgage application experience. Why, you ask? Paula and Hannah are trying to navigate a complex mortgage process where remediation resources aren't digitally delivered when receiving their mortgage application denial. Have you ever read through an adverse action letter and thought, the hell am I reading here, hieroglyphics? Now put yourself in the shoes of a consumer whose application has been denied for canned reasons with limited explanations. Imagine how you'd feel, probably like Paula and Hannah. And that's why we created the no to yes solution to provide actionable solutions digitally. So the no to yes machine works first by ingesting denied loan application data and presents detailed explanations for each denial reason paired with personalized remediation recommendations. These recommendations will often include financial literacy resources and programs such as down payment assistance, housing finance authority resources, or local grant assistance. N2Y then provides a progress tracker so the consumer can address and complete each remediation step. Through this process, N2Y also includes AI-powered chat support option to ask questions or to request additional information. For those that prefer human interaction, there's still the phone option available. So here's where we're going to walk through the consumer interface with the N2Y machine. N2Y is modeled to provide a TurboTax-like experience, addressing suggested remediation one at a time as to not overwhelm the consumer, but to engage them with milestones throughout the personalized journey. Here you see a detailed explanation and description of Paula's denial reason with a projected timeline of how quickly this can be remedied. Now direct your attention to the buttons on the right side of the screen where it's paired with a host of custom solutions and resources unique to both Paula and Hannah based on N2Y's personalized analysis. They can choose which remediation steps they're ready to get started on. Next, you're going to notice encouraging messaging and a progress bar that updates for each completed remediation step, followed by soft predicals. So in this case, Hannah sees her credit score increase as a result of her remediation efforts. You'll also notice that there's help chat, always accessible on the right side of the screen, and available in a variety of languages. Remediation complete. Hannah's frown is turned upside down, and that's because she has new hope in completing her path to becoming a homeowner. Now, she also has her list of lenders, featuring the lender that she originally applied with to create stickiness between the consumer and the lender. And then we go to market, really following our requirement gathering and build out periods, where then we create an incubator pilot with interested mortgage lenders and prove out our concept. For this, we estimate a 12-month timeline and then an additional 12-month timeline to really drive industry-wide adoption.
1 minute.
And we have some asks as well for legislation to modify the adverse action notice to include links to educational tools like N2Y. Then we would also request Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac with their home counselor assisted borrower readiness solutions to be accessible to N2Y consumers. N2Y will scale starting with application denials, then fallout scenarios, and finally lead generation, which we call UGen, or ULead Gen. And that can be delivered direct into a mortgage lender's CRM. Node.ES Machine has the potential to create conversion paths for 2 million consumers and nearly $1 trillion in mortgage origination volume. Most importantly, N2Y engages consumers who didn't think they had the opportunity to become homeowners, just like Paula and Hannah. And that helps them achieve homeownership and live the American dream. So judges, why say no when it feels so good to say yes? Thank you.
Team U-Turn, thank you so much. All right, judges. Steve.
Okay, you are clearly Shark Tank ready, so good job. I'm curious as to why you suggest public funding or backing as opposed to private funding, going and raising private capital and collaborating with the agencies in order to drive the solution.
We discussed a lot of different options on how that could be funded. And Brian, you want to?
Yeah, I want to incorporate our team as well
Yeah.
here.
We don't know what's possible, but we both would be acceptable. It's an incubator, though, either privately backed or publicly backed. Either would work.
Faith.
Does your tool, is it optimizing borrowers' payments and rethinking, are you changing the borrower's actions with debt? And is it kind of an optimization tool to improve their DTI and credit score? And can you do that in the first 60 days so that you don't have to give them a denial?
So we're first targeting that denial base first, right? So that was really our first iteration.
Mhm.
But then the roadmap, like absolutely get in front of it, try to be a little bit more predictive and helpful in the front end.
Thank you.
So I'll bite as well and be a little more of the Shark Tank person. Yeah. So when you look at your market and you look at competitors, obviously there are others who provide credit remediation. What exactly do you think is, the major differentiator between you and those services? Is it the fact that you're one of the first movers for generative AI? Is it the fact that it's
Precisely. We think a lot of the existing solutions out there tend to be a bit archaic, where you might find in the denial letter information with resources available to the consumer, but it's not digitally delivered to them. And so as part of our asks too is that, that link direct to the resource could be directed directly within the adverse action notice. And then I think there's the engaging way of it to kind of help gamify, but take the bar through the journey, which doesn't necessarily happen through a home counselor or other resources.
Excellent. Melissa.
Yeah, I have to warn you, we've been doing a lot of work on adverse action notices. What about the consumers for whom the reason they are denied really isn't something they can change, especially in the near term? How will you all coach, counsel, advise, especially through a digital system, that reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this,
Bankruptcy, too recent.
Right. Yeah, I think in this first iteration, we still wanted to pull in, say, through the chat bot, to have the resources accessible more through traditional forms so that we're not subjugating them from home counselors or a more long-term path to getting towards home ownership.
So strategies around different circumstances.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Team 9, U-Turn. Yes to no. No to yes. Okay, and our last team today, Team 10. Team Apex. Take your time getting set up, and when you're ready, let us know, and we'll start the clock. Judges, have your questions prepared. Ready?
Good morning. By now, I think you have all met Sammy. We got to meet her too as part of this process. She wants to buy a home in Arkansas, earning $31,000 a year. We ran her profile, and what she wants to buy, she actually qualifies for the Dream Down Payment Initiative. Sadly, today, her access to this help depends more on the LO that is assigned to her profile than it does on her own merit and eligibility. It's $25,000. $25,000 that could unlock her dream of homeownership. Now, she's not alone. She stands in the shoes of hundreds of thousands of parents, nurses, small business owners like my mom, veterans like my colleague Whitney, teachers, emergency workers, folks who this very night will go to bed with their family knowing that they've let one more day of wealth building slip away. Now, $25,000 is enough for a 3.5% down payment for a home priced at 80% of the median price in every single state except Hawaii. That's enough to convert 1.1 million Black and Hispanic renters into homeowners. That's what we're focusing on. How do we maximize access and opportunity to finance? Now, the problems with down payment assistance programs, I think we all are well aware of what they are. They relate to a lack of awareness. A borrower must first know that there's a program that could help her. Lack of availability. She must be working with a lender that is available, participating in that program. And even if she's lucky enough to have that, she still has to be assigned an LO that has the know-how, that knows how, and wants to actually go through the process with her. And assuming all that is met, there's still the complexity and duplication of documents, papers, everything that she's already had to do for her main mortgage. So we want to bring the DPA process into the digital mortgage ecosystem. And while we know that there are some providers that have tried to centralize directories, it falls short because not one of them is able to address all four of these issues.
And with that, let me introduce our solution. The Assistance Program Exchange, also known as Apex Navigator, a centralized industry utility that is going to empower the mortgage ecosystem that supports DPA programs. The Apex Navigator will empower this ecosystem in 5 distinct ways. It will be a central point of entry for all DPA programs nationally to standardize and provide their information and making it accessible to all the participants. It will empower and enable the consumer to see this information and, more importantly, identify lenders that are able to support or offer the programs in which they qualify. It will empower those trusted advisors, counselors, realtors, others that are invested in that home ownership journey. On the lender side, we see an easy connection into different lender tech stacks that puts this information in the hands of the loan officers through the tools that that company uses so that they have that information when they need it, when they're talking to their borrower. But wait, there's more. We also see a way of standardizing the guidelines and requirements for these programs, which is now a separate application, paper-based process, to be co-opted into existing underwriting and decisioning systems so that borrowers are not daunted by additional processes and complexity. We heard the problem statements put forth by the Velocity team. We recognize that we are improving data quality through standardization. We are improving adoption and implementation with access. And we are increasing digital trust with empowerment.
Apex will empower borrowers to own the home, stay in the home, and reach that goal of generating wealth.
So long as there's any paper in the process, we can move into a digital mortgage ecosystem. We're not asking you to blow up. We're asking you to build up. We're not asking you to transform how mortgage is done. We're here to transform lives. Thank you.
Team 10, Apex, thank you so much. And judges, any questions? David.
So if I get a chance, I want to ask 2 quick questions. Number one, how many down payment assistance programs are out there today that people can get access to?
2,498 that I counted, there's probably more.
2,498. And that's programs, so I multiply that by some number then, huh?
Correct.
Okay. So from that standpoint, second thing is, you know, from what I've experienced and seen, there tends to be loan officers that go after, you know, I do these 3 programs. How are we going to get loan officers incented and excited to go after these programs?
Yeah, 2 points. First, it's very hard to get to know the programs because they all operate differently. They look differently. You have to ingest data differently. So I think the very fact that we can leverage a MISMO standard data set to normalize that information helps just familiarity and completion of the paperwork much easier. So second thing is it actually creates a commercial advantage, right? Because we're enabling to put that information right in front of the LO while they're speaking with the homeowner. So they don't have to do anything else today, right? This actually automates and gives them a result that pops in right when they're speaking to the consumer. Anything you would add?
Absolutely, you nailed it.
Very good, thank you.
Next question, Faith?
I love the thinking about down payment assistance, especially in this environment. I was going to ask the same question. I feel like implementation and execution for DPAs has been rough forever in our marketplace. And when times are good, borrowers at risk are ignored, and, you know, easy borrowers are made, you know, loans, and we saw that in the pandemic. So I was trying to think, what automation are you doing to kind of help secure this and normalize this disparate group of down payment assistance programs? So similar.
So sure, we surveyed, you know, quite a few programs, and, you know, they're all going to have 10 to 15 factors that relate to the borrower property attributes. First, by leveraging, again, data sets that already exist for how we ingest and present that information, and by ingesting the documents, right, we can actually normalize a great deal of things. Not much different than what we're doing for like e-closings today, where we can create docs from data, right? And look, you know, well, these are poorly funded agencies, so I think we create an architecture that they can themselves leverage to help with administration, processing, qualification, and eligibility.
Yeah, thank you.
One last question. Judges are good. Chris?
If I just move my finger, you catch me.
You got to move quick. We got 15 seconds.
Okay, to the extent to which other folks are out there of your 2,400, what would be the reasons why they would perhaps feel that jumping into your system would potentially?
And the answer is yes. Sorry.
Better utilization of the programs.
Okay.
Team 10, Apex, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let's hear it for our teams and participants. I want to thank all of the teams and participants for coming and participating here. You know, how many of you have traveled to get here? Look at this, right? Let's hear it. Just an incredible commitment of time and resources and of your intellectual expertise and capacity. And we are so grateful. And the outcome is really powerful and really interesting. You know, we've seen how these presentations cover how to try to address the challenges that we face in this very fragmented industry. And what we've seen are solutions to deal with awareness and adoption of new programs or new technologies, the need for data centralization and standardization, and the efficiency that can be created through centralized and streamlined workflows. And also, in many of these solutions is a strong call for a new kind of public-private partnership vehicle. So judges, I'm now going to invite you to relocate into the judges' lounge to deliberate on the amazing demonstrations that you've just seen. And we are going to take a voting break for the next 4 minutes to make sure you have a chance to assess your favorite team. Remember, Slido gives you the opportunity to change your vote if you've seen something later in the program that has really attracted your attention. And I will be back really shortly. Judges? If I could please ask you to take your seats. Thank you. Thank you. That was very exciting. And thank you all for your participation and for your observations. Next, while the judges are deliberating, we have a great panel discussion for you. I think one that's very near and dear to my heart, which is around data access and mortgage finance, and really looking at this from a regulatory perspective. So moderating for us today is Anne-Marie Pippin, my comrade in arms in producing this TechSprint. She is the Associate Director of the Office of Financial Technology, and she's going to be moderating this panel discussion. So Anne-Marie, take us away.
Right, well, thank you, David. I hope you all really enjoyed the demonstrations and the creative solutions that we just heard from all of our TechSprint teams. While the judges are deliberating, we're now going to turn to hearing from federal financial regulatory leadership on responsible innovation, data and access opportunities and challenges. We have a distinguished panel of speakers on the stage with me. It's my distinct honor to welcome Ann Epstein, Assistant Director of the Office of Competition and Innovation at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Grovetta Gardineer, Senior Deputy Comptroller of Bank Supervision Policy, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. And then last but not least, we have Sunayna Tuteja, Chief Innovation Officer at the Federal Reserve. So today, we're going to be exploring the role of emerging technology in the intersection of data usage, privacy, and responsible innovation in housing finance, in banking, and in the broader financial services sector. Now, before we get started, just a brief disclaimer. The representatives on the panel are making these remarks on behalf of their respective agencies. They do not constitute legal interpretation, guidance, or advice of the agencies represented. Any opinions or views stated are their own and may not represent the views of their respective organizations. Okay, now that's out of the way. So all questions are going to be open for each of our panelists to answer and comment on. But for this first question, I'd like to start with Sunayna. Sunayna, how does the Federal Reserve view the role of fintech companies in shaping and really reshaping housing finance, banking, and financial services more broadly?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us. And since I'm the first on the panel, I'll extend my thanks to all of you for this invitation, but also having was sitting in the back lurking on kind of some of the presentations. It's really inspiring to kind of see the novel solutions that are being proposed and helping us solve gnarly problems. And that, in its essence, is innovation, right? That you're solving problems that need to be solved and you're creating value for the end users that, uplifts their experience. So thank you to you and your colleagues for hosting this and inviting us. I think in one word, the answer to your question about that partnership and collaboration from a fintech perspective is a resounding yes. And I know I might be talking a little bit of my book since I came from fintech and now work at the Fed. But let me kind of break that down into kind of, why we believe that collaboration and partnership is critical. One, you think of just the volume, the velocity, and the variety of change that is coming at us. And I mean, ask yourself, do you think anything is decelerating or does it continue to accelerate, right? I think it's accelerating on steroids. It wasn't that long ago when people were writing articles about how ChatGPT had broken all kinds of records because they had amassed 100 million users in less than 3 months. Well, last night I read that Threads apparently has broken ChatGPT's record and gaining 100 million users in less than, a week, right? So I use that as a cheeky reference point to state that the change that is coming at us is only going to accelerate. And it is just unfathomable for us to, and I think a little bit hubris for us to think that we can interrogate all of these, moving pieces and be that nimble to understand them and kind of make decisions. So I think, that is, item number one on why these types of partnerships are critical. The second thing I would say is, when I was in Silicon Valley, working in fintech and crypto, and I saw this firsthand, and I'm sure from a regulatory perspective, you guys see this and sometimes probably roll your eyes at it, is like this constant bundling and unbundling that's happening within financial services, right? There's an old Silicon Valley adage that there's only two ways to make money in business. Either you're bundling services or unbundling services. And I think in FinServ, it's kind of happening all at once, both the bundling aspect and the unbundling aspect. And again, I think of it as from our role as a regulator in order for us to really have that true essence of what's happening on the ground. What are the motivations driving this exercise of bundling and unbundling? We've really got to lean in and listen and learn and understand kind of the incentives that are driving it. And then the third, which I think is the most important, is the consumer, right? If you think about it from a consumer perspective, they're adopting these capabilities. And I hate to say it, they're not waiting for the regulators to give it a stamp of approval or not. And, Grovetta and I have had many spicy conversations on this topic, especially on crypto. And, and there's this notion in user-centric design called liquid expectations. And what that really means is, as a consumer, when I have experienced something that is so delightful, so simple, so effortless, that now becomes my expectation for everything else, right? So, if you've ordered Domino's Pizza, they have this cheeky little app that shows you every step of the way where your pizza making is. And you're like, well, okay, that's pizza. Getting a mortgage is very different. But as a consumer, I'm going, wait a second. If a pizza-making company thinks that I deserve enough respect so that I have transparency every step of the way, why shouldn't I expect the same when I am applying for a job or applying for a mortgage? And I know that delta seems very wide, but we've done a lot of consumer surveys and research when I was in the private sector, and now from a Fed perspective, and that's why it's called liquid expectation, right? That your last, best, most delightful experience now becomes the baseline against which you measure everything. So, you think about it from a, again, regulatory perspective, we bring a lot of scale, we bring a lot of institutional memory. How do we complement that with maybe speed? I think as regulatory institutions, we do a lot of really cool things, but maybe our metabolism isn't exactly on the same pace as some of these changes. So I think for those reasons and several others that I know Ann and Grovetta will likely touch on, I think it's incumbent on us to kind of approach these partnerships with fintech community with that sense of curiosity. And by the way, skepticism is okay. I was a venture capitalist that invested in a lot of these fintechs, and I was like, okay, that sounds great on a deck, show me. right? Show me how it works. Show me if you think this solution will actually render this experience, show me, prove it, right? Or as my very British parents would say, the proof is in the pudding, right? So I think skepticism is okay and actually healthy, but what we can't have is apathy. So I think that sense of curiosity and complementing our scale and institutional memory with their speed, I think behooves. And at the end of the day, the person that wins is the end consumer whom we are all trying to serve, so. And now Grovetta can tell me why I was wrong about all of it.
Never do that, Sunayna. Is this on? Yeah. Well, good afternoon almost, everyone. So I want to just echo for a few seconds. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. It's incredibly exciting to see in real time all of these solutions for, unfortunately, very old and outstanding problems that we just, for some reason, given our best efforts, most of the time over the last 70 or 80 years, we're still talking about the same issues that are impacting the same demographic of people, that are impacted by financial services, which is the stepping stone to really having everything we've talked about in this country and globally, you know, that generational wealth building, that economic footing that helps you get ahead. And so I don't disagree with you. You know, the pace and the evolution of the industry at this point in time with regard to fintech and how it's being powered. I mean, we're no longer looking at IT from a regulatory perspective as the computers that are sitting inside of financial institutions and mortgage companies and real estate companies that is just an intake mechanism and a replacement for a typewriter. Bet some of you have never even seen a typewriter. But, I mean, we're not talking about that anymore. This is not IT. This is the power of the financial industry. The technology is now integrated. And with that comes incredible opportunity. Absolutely. I love the data that says that last experience that you had is the one by which you will then base every new experience. And as long as those experiences are positive, everything is great. As long as my money is making money on those investments, as long as my mortgage, application process, all 27,000 steps of it, as long as it's moving along in the way that those who are in charge of it have disclosed that it will go for me, and we're making progress, my liquid valuation is wonderful. But when it goes wrong, what happens? Based on what you just said, that last experience takes my trust level and it brings it way down. This is my money. I'm trusting you with my data. I'm giving you my social security number and all of my account information, my 401ks if I happen to have one, all of my receipts, everything you need to make a credit decision about my ability to repay on the largest asset, if this is a mortgage, that I will probably ever have. And so as a regulator, I want to see the opportunities. I want to understand how this powers what we need for modernization to make this experience what it can be based on the technology. But the technology has to live by the rules and the guidance. And that's what we do also as regulators. Imparting what our supervisory expectations are is important for a lender to understand. It's important for a fintech company to understand. It's important for every third party, fourth party to understand how to abide by those rules that keep the process safe and sound, and how to abide by those rules that protect consumers from harm in these types of transactions. So there's great opportunity here, and I think we have to explore it, we have to understand it, and we need to embrace it as regulators. but imparting that gates and guardrails approach that has been tried and true, I don't think we can throw that out as we begin to look at a new and evolving landscape. We have to incorporate that. That has to be a part of what we do. So recently, some of you may have seen that the federal banking agencies, I know there was bated breath, and at long last, we published our third-party risk management guidance. It had been kicking around for a little while, but we got it out, and we updated it, and we did things to try to bring greater clarity to exactly this aspect of financial growth, the mortgage market, banking, investing. We did this. And we'll continue to do those things to make sure that we are sharing what our supervisory expectations are, that we're being very clear about in these new relationships that are evolving with the industry that we've never seen before. How do we apply the same old rules? Because basically, I don't know that we always need to change what's working, but we do need to adapt it to what's happening. So I don't disagree, Sunayna, because I will also say, in March, the OCC announced that we were standing up the Office of Financial Technology. I don't know, Jason, which one of us had the name first, but it's okay. We'll talk about that. But we did, and why is that important at this point in time? And why do you see this happening across so many regulatory agencies? It is a recognition, it is an opportunity, it is a focus. It is what we need to do in order to keep the system safe and protect consumers. It is embracing the fact that technology is changing how we are engaging in banking and finance. And so I think these are incredible things, and I'm honored to be the senior leader at the OCC that has this office and will be working with all of you as we continue to move forward to stand that up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
See, we said we would make it spicy. There you go.
There you have it.
Hi. Very nice to be here. I'm Ann Epstein. I lead the Office of Competition and Innovation at the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I really want to thank my colleagues at the FHFA for inviting me here today. It was really good to hear all of the solutions that you all have been working on very hard over the last few days. These were problems from my time at Freddie Mac that I spent a fair amount of time thinking about when I was working on digital innovation and when I was working on access to credit solutions. And as was stated, a lot of these are, in fact, very challenging solutions. And I think the TechSprint concept is a good one to get all the right people in a room and think creatively about it. The CFPB also uses TechSprints. We did our first TechSprint in October of 2020. Had lots of conversations with FHFA when they were thinking about launching their TechSprint program. And because now all of ours have been virtual since they launched during the pandemic, you'll all need to pay it forward, and we'll have lots of good conversations about the pros and cons of virtual versus in-person. But I'm personally happy to be in this room and gathering the energy from all of you and all of those ideas. The Office of Competition and Innovation at the CFPB is, in true innovation form, sort of the fourth iteration of kind of this type of approach to thinking about financial technology, name notwithstanding, from, as our world has changed really significantly and continues, as Sunayna said, to speed up in the level of change. The word competition innovation is part of a new approach by the CFPB to think structurally about some of these, as we talked about, seemingly intractable problems. Going back to, if you think about market structures and how do the market structures and the incentive systems and all of those kinds of things, create or limit opportunity, depending on how that works. And we fully believe, back to the question prompt on how do we think about fintechs, we fully believe that a vibrant and open system where new entrants are able to enter a market and compete effectively, where smaller players are able to compete effectively, that's where you create innovation that benefits consumers. And so, that is sort of an approach that we are thinking about much more broadly than just my relatively small office at the CFPB, but thinking about it, in how do we generally promote open markets to more fully empower consumers to get access to the best financial products for them. So I think with that, there's, a lot of substantive questions coming, so I will pass it back to Anne-Marie.
There are indeed. This is a great start. So this next question, I'm going to start with Grovetta, but again, open to all panelists. Grovetta, how is the OCC thinking about the key challenges in maintaining data privacy while enhancing transparency in banking and mortgage lending processes?
So I think, of course, we want transparency in these, in all of the steps throughout the entire process. We believe that this is important. We've been working to try to improve this through the mortgage process by taking on a really active role with the PAVE task force. The OCC was one of the 14, 16 numerous agencies across the administration that really looked at the appraisal process specifically in order to think about how you could enhance both the customer experience while making sure that data is being used and protected and not abused and not misused in this process. A couple of things that we actually did very recently, again with our interagency partners, was to issue proposed guidance on reconsideration of value. We want to make sure that banks that have had appraisal processes in place since, I would say, guidance that was issued back in 2010, are continuing to utilize those appraisal review processes, but updating those to understand and see what they can develop in order to be reactive and accommodate any new information coming from any source, consumers, other appraisers, going through that process of review that could introduce bias into that process, and making sure that there's some criteria where you could actually approach that and have the lender, if necessary, order another appraisal so that you could ensure that the process was free of bias, data is protected, et cetera. In addition to that, we issued a notice of proposed rulemaking across the agencies as well. And that notice of proposed rulemaking is about AVMs, or asset valuation models. Again, looking at how those models are used, how the data that is put into those models is protected in order to ensure that there is consistency across the process and that values are, true values are being given to those who are going through the process. So I think our ongoing focus on those types of issues shows a true commitment by the OCC, and we're continuing to work on examination procedures. We're doing a lot of work as well through the FFIEC Task Force on Supervision, as well as the Task Force on Consumer Compliance, to enhance the type of exam procedures that all of our examiners can use across the agencies that alert them and look for indicia of bias in the appraisal process and engage with banking and financial institutions about those as well. So a lot is going on in that front in order to make sure that we can address those issues.
Very good. Thank you. Anne, Sunayna?
Sure. So, I think the question was about sort of some of the concerns around data privacy and data access, and certainly most of the solutions we saw were really about better access to data and better verification of data and all of those kinds of things. And data is, the new oil. It is part and parcel. And I've always said about the mortgage process, essentially, you're not creating widgets, you're just taking data in, creating different data and putting data in terms of cash flow streams out, right? So it's basically a data business. So it's the important fuel of innovation, but obviously there's lots of concerns about keeping data private. You heard that, with many of the panelists' questions. We talked a little bit about consumer permission data. We do have concerns about uses of data beyond the consumer permissioned or the consumer expected use case that they've provided. I think there's concerns, around use of that data for example, in terms of marketing purposes that might not have been anticipated by the consumer. One of the fundamental things about consumer empowerment, and again, you heard that in the solutions, was the ability for a consumer to hold their own data, to shop more effectively, particularly if we start to see in the digital world that better consumer shopping does not help because they are not seeing the same information that somebody else is seeing, that they are actually being disempowered in their shopping through the use of their own data being weaponized against them. That is problematic. From a market structure and competition standpoint, of course, there's also the issue that large technology platforms might have more data, and that would then crowd out other competitors. So, I think we need to think deeply about the data issues associated that drive these solutions. And, I was really heartened to see or hear that the panel asked lots of questions of those technology solutions around who owns the data, who has access to the data, how do we keep the data private, all of those kinds of questions.
I think, my colleagues here have done a really good job with the specificity. Maybe a macro point I might make is I was speaking to a ex-colleague of mine who is a senior partner at a global consulting firm. And as you can imagine, we're coming up to the third quarter in the private sector. So every CEO and their board is thinking about their strategy development for the years coming. And I know it's only June, but everyone's looking at 2024, 2025. And he made this point about how every CEO and board of directors that they're working with, cutting across different categories, everyone needs and is trying to figure out the right data strategy, right? And I share that as a point to, this is a pervasive issue, and rightly so, both in the public sector, but also in the private sector. And, I think approaching it with, where we do see things go awry, I often wonder, rewind back to the build phase of whatever this app or new capability was, and was that being approached with a sense of, humility, right? And I use that word very intentionally because all of these components are still in their nascency. Utilizing data for better decision-making just seems like, well, that's a need to do, no longer a nice to do, right? But if you think about it, the technologies and the capabilities that we're using to drive that outcome, a lot of them are in their nascency and they are shape-shifting, right? No one was talking about generative AI 6 months ago, and now it's having a Cambrian moment, and I can't, like the number of meetings on my calendar that are about generative AI. So I think where I might, provide a grounding is, I think it goes back to when we are interrogating these capabilities or we are innovating in these spaces, is it driven by a thesis or is it, shiny object syndrome, right? Because when it is the latter, that's when, we have the intended and the unintended consequences, like the negative side of it, right? But I think if you start from an approach of what is the problem we're trying to solve, why does this problem need to be solved? Guess what? Not every problem needs a solution. As in my personal life, I have learned that the hard way, and also, why are we uniquely qualified to solve the problem and why this way, right? I think sometimes we fall in love so quickly with our solution. I think playing that counterpoint of why this way, why us, why now, I think really helps ground some of these solutions and capabilities where it's not like you're gonna completely eradicate any, unintended consequences, but you will mitigate and minimize that risk. So I think maybe more of a macro point to build on it.
I think that's a great point, because that's what a regulator, I think, is going to come in and ask. When the regulator engages with a financial institution, that's exactly the kinds of questions, and that's the knowledge that we would expect the institution to have. And if they're engaging with a fintech, for example, that they understand what that connectivity is. They understand, do they need to understand, exactly how quantum physics works? Absolutely not. Do they need to know if it's going to deliver on the concept and the promise of what you said it was going to do, and how do I measure that success? If that's the conversation that an institution can have with a financial institution examiner, an agency, then I think you are demonstrating good risk management. That is absolutely, that's the role as we look at all of these evolving technologies and the way that they are dealing with the privacy concerns. So I think that's a great issue on both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Grovetta, I'm going to come back to you for this question. Could you shed some light on the roles of the OCC in the banking sector in ensuring fair access to mortgage loans, especially for historically disadvantaged groups? And what measures are being taken to prevent discriminatory lending practices as we're moving to a more digital mortgage process?
Sure. The OCC takes these issues incredibly seriously. It's a part of our mission, safety, soundness, and fairness of the national banks and federal thrifts that we supervise. And so very recently, at the beginning of the year, feels recent to me, we actually issued an update to our Fair Lending Handbook. And the Fair Lending Handbook, or all of the OCC handbooks, I would say, I like to call them, this is the key to the open book test. Our handbooks are actually public. And they're public because we believe institutions need to understand exactly what we're going to evaluate them against when we come in and do those examinations. And fair lending examinations are particularly, these are intricate, dealing with, data, privacy concerns, fairness issues, all of the regulations and statutes that are designed to ensure that there's no illegal discrimination that is occurring in the national bank system, and the safety and soundness and fairness of the system overall. Our handbook, I have to say, hadn't been updated in a while, but that didn't mean that we were not continuing inside the OCC to develop our approaches, looking at our economics department that worked incredibly closely with our examiners on the ground and folks in my consumer compliance policy department to really look at how can we use different modeling, different elements of data that we traditionally get in order to help us understand when an institution is exhibiting indicia of higher risk for fair lending, fair housing, and discriminatory activities. That allows us to come in and do true risk-based supervision. Because if the institution understands what its discrimination risk and its fair lending risk is, and the examiners understand, and we've laid that out very clearly in the examination manual, open book test. You know what we're coming in to look for. We understand, and you understand, how we expect you to do non-discriminatory lending in your decision-making, but getting the data that you need and utilizing it in this new environment. The rules haven't changed, but again, the platforms have. So we are looking at those things very closely. In addition to that, some of you may have heard about the OCC's Project Reach. And Project Reach, our Roundtable for Economic Access and Change, is proudly heading into its third year. And through Project Reach, we've got 4 work streams, and those work streams are really focused on the preservation of minority depository institutions, looking at work that we can do to have the financial system be more embracing with regard to credit invisibles, understanding that credit invisible is not just a person, but can also be a small business that is also being presumably locked out of the system and in a way disadvantaged. And so we're looking at utilizing our convening authority with regard to Project Reach to bring together what I heard so many talk about, this preference and this openness to private-public partnerships that we're seeing take hold these days. And this is a great opportunity that we've seen continue as well, not creating solutions, but certainly bringing various parties and stakeholders together to see if we can amass these talents and resources, again, to deal with age-old problems that we still have not been able to really solve. Those of discrimination, those of the wealth gap continuing to grow, the percentages of individuals who continue to be discriminated against in housing, not changing since 1968. We can do better. And so these are just some of the things that the OCC is really proud to lead to see if we can address some of these just pervasive problems. And then focusing on seeing what we can do to modernize this and really address the problems.
Thank you, that was great. Ann.
Sure. So, I think it's worthwhile noting that it's for nearly 50 years at this point, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA, has been seeking to protect consumers from discrimination when it comes to seeking or applying for or using credit. Sadly, even though 50 years have gone by, that road is not finished. And we heard a lot from Lisa Rice and Delicia earlier today on how those rules have to be applied in sort of the new world, and how even today we are continuing to find ways that as we advance in technology, we may see, the structure still bias against underserved classes. And we cannot assume that the technology will solve this problem for us. We need to, and I don't want to, because they were beautiful about, stating all of those issues, but we need to be, we need to continue our work at the CFPB and on the enforcement of ECOA, particularly as it relates to technology moving forward. I will note that ECOA also requires explanation of any kind of adverse action related to credit, whether it's a denial of credit, whether it's a termination of a credit line, or whether it's a change of credit term that is unfavorable to the consumer. And that's a really important component as well of a consumer against discrimination against the consumer, because they are given an explanation of that. And we saw one of the TechSprint teams present on that. We actually had an entire TechSprint on adverse action notices, but that is an important component of that explanation of both fairness as well as helping a consumer understand what they would need to do to move forward. What I will say on that is, as you think about using some of the new technologies associated with these things, the director's been really clear, there's no technological exceptionalism. So whether you're making your decisions based on, pencil and a calculator, or you're making your decisions based on, alternative data and really complicated algorithms, those laws still apply, the framework still applies. If you can't comply with the law in terms of adverse action notices or other things, you can't do it. So, you know, we have a ways to go in terms of, you know, continuing our work in fairness. But I think it is, you know, worthwhile to sort of just state that we want to make the world better as we move forward from a technology perspective. And we've learned a lot, I think, from the days where we thought that technology would miraculously solve the problem. And now we need to think very deeply about some of those things as we move forward in that space. I will also say, and Grovetta did a great job, that the ECOA also covers the application of credit as it relates to a home appraisal. Grovetta covered a lot of the new work that we are doing on an interagency basis on the property appraisal and valuation equity task force. Yeah, I had a moment. I was like, the acronyms, there's always so many. You know, but related to AVM models, also related to, in June, we actually put out some notices of rulemaking and proposals. So please take a look. Those things are open still. I think we still have another few weeks. So please take your time to look at those things for comments. You know, that's really important. And I guess I should also mention, because we talked a lot about data, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, but you know, a lot of these things do go back to the fairness and representativeness in the data. And so that's another important place where we need to make sure that the data is accurate, that it's fair, and that it's compliant.
Very good. Thank you, Ann. I've just been given the signal that the judges actually concluded their deliberations. And Sunayna, I know you have a hard stop, but any closing thoughts on this topic for innovation fintech broadly?
I know our sprinters are like, get off the stage. We just want to know who won. So I'll just end by, I think thank you for this. And maybe, you know, just to recap what we're saying and connecting back to this TechSprint that you guys have hosted is, you know, we talked about, you know, eradicating bias and kind of creating that level playing field. And you know, you can only widen the aperture when you're bringing in a diversity of perspectives, right? If not, why would anyone acknowledge that there's a problem or there's a need to solve the problem? So I think it just underscores where we started, the need for that private-public partnership, if nothing else, because you're bringing in a diversity of perspectives. And you know, while I started, you know, being cheeky about Grovetta is going to disagree, I like it. Like this is the DC and public sector is a whole new world for me. So I like when we duke it out because hopefully we both grow, we both look at things from a different perspective, and I think that diversity of thought is critical, and I think the sprint, that public-private partnership all reflects that, and I think that's what makes me bullish that these systemic issues will be resolved because we're taking a very different contemporary approach towards doing it. So bringing it back to this event and getting ready to hear who's the winner.
Well, join me in thanking our panelists. Right. Well, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. So the judges have concluded their deliberations. We're ready to announce team recognition. Just a note, the judges have taken some proactive steps to ensure that a judge's late arrival after I think a couple of the first teams to go will not impact the overall voting results. So just wanted to say that. Okay, so first up to announce, envelope here. All right. First up to announce the winner of the Eureka Award is Miss Delicia Hand.
So the winner of the Eureka Award is Home for All. And while while they're coming up, what we really liked about Home for All as a team, so this focus on creativity. We like the emphasis on consumer control, helping consumers know and get ready to become home ready, mortgage ready. Also, the focus on personal direction to be able to change their own financial picture, again, to get home ready. And to also learn about the mortgage process. And then also, we really like the universal information portal, which we could see other use cases for that as well for the consumer. So congrats, Home for All.
All right, congratulations, Home for All. Okay, I'm next going to welcome Faith Schwartz, or nope, David Coleman, to the stage to is there to announce the winner of the Jump Award. David.
So they told me the name of the award, and I wanted to come over and go, jump. So everybody up. No, just kidding. A couple of things came out as we went through, and it was really, everyone did a fantastic job. And when we started looking, it was really kind of tough to make, draw some lines between different groups who were presenting. I mean, obviously, there are a few things that were common across, 5 here, 6 there, 7 there. We were looking at clearly data was central and having reliability of data. Secondly was it seemed like, there was, a large push towards a government private type of model where we're looking at, that there was, I think there was only 1 or 2 out there that were 100% private. Everybody else had either a purely governmental role or else a shared role in the industry, which, shows you that there's a lot of importance and it has to be done. But that being said, I mean, I think that we were looking at, on the Jump Award is really, in the long run, where could the most impact come out of a project or what was there? And for that, we felt that Finovation was the winner of the Jump Award. Congratulations, guys. So we clearly within this space, we were looking at, there were a number of key things that jumped out. One was, the relationship between the IRS and tax, as well as with looking at, being able to pull in converts unqualified income into qualified income, if I got it down right. So I still have some questions on that one, but clearly, I got it right. So, but clearly impactful, leveraging things that were there yet and things that needed to be added, but the partnership and then the management techniques. So overall,
Treasury IRS.
And the Treasury IRS, got to get that one. So congratulations, guys.
Congrats, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Right, congratulations, Finovation. Okay, finally, to announce the winner of the FAST Award, we have Mr. Chris Brummer.
So the winner of the FAST Award is U-Turn. That was fast. Well, what we really liked about U-Turn, besides the fact of the Shark Tanky approach to it, was that really it highlighted the fact that there are problems that can be solved and that can be solved quickly, identifying something that can have a large impact with digitally delivered solutions. As a law professor, all I do is teach 20-somethings how to create the things that these guys can hopefully deconstruct and then to deliver for people to make a real impact in their lives. So congratulations to everyone over at U-Turn, and I cannot emphasize what was just said here. We were sitting around and we were thinking about what an impact all of these solutions would bring to the market, and it was just invigorating. It it was amazing. So, thanks.
All right, congratulations, you turn. And last but not least, I can announce the recipient of our final recognition, the crowd favorite. So this is the winner according to our audience here in Constitution Center, as well as online. So with 588 votes, Finovation. We have come to the conclusion of our inaugural TechSprint event. Please join me in congratulating all of the teams and all 80 participants. Thank you so much for being with us this week, solving for some of the most intractable issues the mortgage industry is experiencing today, and showing us all what's possible and leveraging data and driving responsible innovation outcomes in the mortgage finance sector. Before we let you go, I also do want to thank our panel of judges, all of our speakers, our subject matter experts who've assisted and guided the teams over the past 4 days, the entire staff at the Alliance for Innovative Regulation for all of your support making this event a success. And last but not least, our team and FHFA family who've worked tirelessly over the past 8 months to develop and execute this event. Without you, this TechSprint would not have been a success. Thank you. So we do look forward to seeing you all and others at future Sprint events that FHFA may host, and continuing the discussion on the innovative ideas that we've seen come out of the event today. Thanks so much.